We are going to listen to this conversation with Jeffrey Epstein being interviewed by one Mr. Bannon. And there is some context we'll have to look up during the interview. I have previewed it. I found it to be very fascinating. As you guys know, I don't hop onto popular trends. I deal with that which has meaning and relevance. I think one of the pieces of fortune that you guys will have in hearing this conversation, though at times Epstein was BSing, other times you get to hear the thoughts and articulation of someone who's very intelligent. I remember growing up in the ghetto that I come from. Not until the 11th grade did I meet someone whose intelligence I was impressed with. The truth is, most people, you're around average, everyday folks. You almost don't know that a certain level of and quality of thinking exists. And so this will be a real treat. And also beyond that, most of you haven't heard from Jeffrey Epstein. You've only heard him represented in a particular way. And so now you get to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. There's something that is consistent when you see people demonized. You find that often when you hear them, they don't seem so bad. This is even true of other figures like Osama bin Laden, which is why you haven't heard from him. When you translate speeches from Muammar Gaddafi, you say, well, that guy doesn't sound like so much of a monster. I tell you guys in the Book of Dark Truths, for example, about how much you're being lied to and misled. And we're going to go ahead and get into it. Buckle up as we go through. Feel free to use the information in the description of this video to send in your questions, comments, tithes, tuition, timestamps, and support. Let's work. Whoa.
Before we get into the deep stuff, let's give some basics or some things I want to do inquire from the others. Walk me through the Santa Fe Institute. What was it about the time at the math? And this was in the late 90s. So they're not going to hear me on this part, right? We're going to do it both ways?
It will not be on the video, but we do have you recorded.
Fine. Remember, when you're answering on these questions, I'm not in the shot, and they're never going to hear my voice. So a little bit you got to repeat in your answer, you got to repeat what my question was.
Oh,
a little bit.
Okay.
Santa Fe Institute. Why, when you're at the top of your game on Wall Street, do you decide to finance, which was at the time, or endow, or become the donor or sponsor, however you want to say it, for what was considered?
So this is the introductory being put out by a gentleman named Steve Bannon. And there's no doubt that it's worth asking, who is Steve Bannon? And so let us give that a summary treatment here. Typed in a simple Google query, and we'll do a bit of reading just so that we have a basic footing. It's always important to know who the characters are. Steve Bannon is a prominent American media executive, political strategist, and former White House chief strategist for Donald Trump. A key figure in right-wing populism, which is to say appealing to poor whites. He formerly ran Breitbart News and served as a CEO for Trump's 2016 campaign. He is known for promoting America First nationalism and has faced legal issues regarding fundraising. He's a criminal like the rest of them, shocker. So he served in the U.S. Navy, earned an MBA from Harvard, worked in investment banking and film production before entering politics. He has a respectable background. And just in case you want to know, it's this guy who always looks like he just walked out of the woods, this fellow right here. So that's who's conducting this interview. All right. So now we know that. Let's get back after the interview.
The most cutting edge group of mathematicians in the world. Action.
So Santa Fe Institute in the late 80s, early 90s, I was interested, I was on the board of Rockefeller. So that starts, Rockefeller University, formed by John D. Rockefeller to sort of give back to the community. It's east side of Manhattan, except it was old. It was sort of old-fashioned. They were talking about medicine, and medicine by itself was, again, subject to the ideas of science. They were trying to use science to find cures for disease. And I said, no, we need to do something different. We need.
One thing I think is worth noting, especially for those of you who haven't had the good fortune of being around people who are highly intelligent or conversing with such folks, is because they are highly intelligent does not mean that everything they say will be intelligent. Though Mr. Bannon is a lot less refined and well-spoken than Mr. Epstein, you'll find periodically he'll stop him, call him out, he'll press him on certain things. And I do appreciate that. It kind of holds Mr. Epstein's feet to the fire at some level. Unfortunately, we'll have to look up a number of things because during the discussion, there was a lot of context left out. So there's an assumption that the viewer, already has some level of familiarity, not only with the background of Mr. Epstein, but also with the certain lexical terms in high finance and much else. And I'll make sure that we break this down for you if you so choose. Let me go ahead and take a pause for the cause. We're going to get back into this work. By the way, shout out to Brian, who had messaged me on wisdom.com/Marquette Devon. I sent you a response. May I also acknowledge Anthony. He writes, "Peace to the saints. Interested to hear your take on this." Oh yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised with this one. I thought it was going to be a sleeper. May I acknowledge Jalen. He writes, "Would you be open to discussing black masculinity, gender dynamics, and racial dynamics with Okay, so they put a link to this person's profile. No, sir. No, sir. He writes, he's an evolutionary psychologist. If you're down, I'll set it up. What's your availability in the next one? I appreciate that opportunity, though. That's love, Jalen. And Jalen's someone I respect very much. I'm trying to work with folks who have a significant following in as much as it'll be more mutually beneficial. Unfortunately, I am extraordinarily busy. Such that even today, when I finally had a chance to work out, I got a phone call and had an unfortunate business item. I got 3 legal cases going on, 18 separate businesses. Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but it gets like that. So time is very precious. Shout out to Mr. Carter. He writes, "Peace to the saints. This interview made me realize that Mr. Jeffrey was for sure an agent and, given his wealth, to act as a clandestine puppet because he purports basic knowledge like he's profound. He's not that bright." Okay. May I also acknowledge Travis came in support of the work via Venmo. Shout out to Brad. He writes, "Epstein says Wall Street guys make things sound complicated on purpose so the little guy doesn't know what they do. He says they don't do much / very simple things. You have stated multiple times that the stock / financial markets are a scam, highlighting your genius once again." I appreciate that, Brad. And that is correct. And it's not only the Wall Street guys that make things sound more complex so that they can gatekeep and ensure that they can continue maintaining high price for what they do. This also occurs with your car mechanic, right? This occurs sometimes at the dentist. Knowledge is valuable, and a lack of knowledge can be very expensive. So this person writes, "Yes, because he kept interrupting." It looks like an incomplete. I must admit, I was impressed with this man. The math was mathing. Yeah, we shall see. We'll take a look with a fine-tooth comb. I think it'll be very much so a benefit because so often in this era, you have to hear from average people, which means people who are not very smart. And so it is a privilege to hear from someone like Mr. Epstein. And that is irrespective of him being a villain or not. Carrying on.
To start interdisciplinary work. In most.
How did a schmuck like you get on the board of Rockefeller? What year was that?
I don't remember. I think 89 and 91.
So that's one of the most prestigious research places in the world, correct?
Yes.
Okay, how did a guy like you get on the board of a blue blood, internationally known, hard research, Nobel Prize winners all over the place? How do they pick a guy like you, a trader from, or basically some guy from Bear Stearns?
Good question. So I was asked to be on the board of Rockefeller, and I think it was.
So there's 2 things to note. And it's a good question. The way he asked it was blunt, and I don't think it was the best way to communicate. Jeffrey's a smart guy. I don't know if he's from New York. I certainly know he was working in New York, and so he can deal with this kind of gruffness. This means of communicating is not the best because it can be misinterpreted. I highly recommend against it. These are the things that in the Master Communicator course I break down. So I wouldn't recommend that. He could have been offensive, but the question is still meaningful, which is to say, at the level of the ultra wealthy, even at the level of the wealthy, being previously known, being connected to a pre-existing network matters. People don't want to just let you in. Trust is critical. And so he's essentially asking, you're just a guy who deals in paper assets. What made you so special that you should be let into this inner circle of the masters of the universe? Who are you really? And then Jeffrey gives his reply.
I was on the board of Rockefeller. There was a money manager who said, Rockefeller needs someone with financial expertise because the university is growing and there's lots of new things. You have to, again, we go back to the original discussion the last time. Up until the mid-'80s or sort of early mid-'70s, the most important thing was your name. If you were Rockefeller, you already were considered to be brilliant. If you were head of General Motors, it was your reputation. It was who you knew, who your family was, what was your character. And then in the mid-'70s, basically, if you remember, you probably had a calculator. It was very advanced in those days to have a Texas Instrument calculator, where it could, by putting in the numbers, it would multiply for you to do square roots. And that was the first, and everyone who had a calculator was already advanced on Wall Street.
Now, I remember, obviously Jeffrey Epstein is significantly older than I am, but I remember different pieces of technology changing. And though he may reference some things that are before my time, the important thing for you to catch on to, especially if you're a business person, and this is the kind of mindset that I talk about in Boston University, is he's talking about how things change and evolve and quite rapidly. And when you have these tools, what it allows you to do is to magnify yourself, multiply yourself, and it makes a smart person it doesn't make you smarter, it allows you to become more than one person, if you like. So the technology that is at your disposal will separate you greatly from those who don't have the technology. And I hope you all are paying attention. Like, for example, with the AI no coding course that I'm teaching, the practicum, I enjoyed it. It's just really so much fun. And because I love creating product, I love creating technology. But I know that the men who are in that course with me, those are the men who are going to have the riches tomorrow because they're figuring out today what's on the horizon and they're utilizing the technology. You're going to have so much better of an understanding of things when you actually use them and you're in the creative process. So as a trader, trading stock, involved in paper assets, he was talking about the latest tools. And at the beginning, the latest tool was a Texas Instrument calculator. Now it's a lot more complex than that. But when it was that, he had it. He was around those people. He was dealing with those tools. And that's the thing that you need to ask yourself is, who's using the latest technology? Who's learning and creating the latest technology? Who are the ambitious people? I need to be around them. And because he took out the time and effort to position himself, I talk about people, places, positions. We already talked about people. He says, hey, how are you hanging out with the Rockefellers? People, critical. Places and position. Places, he was in New York, he was in finance. That's the creme de la creme of money. Come on now. He put himself in there so he can get it in. It says, where can I purchase the AI no code course? You can purchase that at school.com/Marquette. Just click classroom. And the neat thing about that course is it's a practicum. We have all of the lessons we already did recorded, and we're going to do more of them. It's a live session like this, except there's like 35 people on at the same time. I take you through. We're actually building stuff. We're doing everything that's needed to make money, and you can ask questions during it. You can present your own projects. It's like you're within a startup company, and it's one part education, but it's another part practical doing. And it's good because you get to feel like what it feels like to be in a corporation. And most people have never had that experience. I think it's really foolish to try to build a corporation without having at least been an employee in one.
A simple almost like your accountant. The most important parts of business we're really now going to calculations. So it's not only mathematics, but it's things that could be calculated. Reputation couldn't be calculated. I could give you, are you a 10 on a reputation scale, an 8? What does it mean to have a measurement of your reputation? We'll get to that later. But places like Rockefeller needed someone to say, look, we're entering a different world where numbers and the numbers of companies, portfolio management was going to be balanced. It was going to be statistical. Jeffrey, could you come on the board? Potentially sit on the finance committee. Nancy Kissinger and a bunch of other people.
Okay, in case you guys didn't catch that, his long-winded answer to how did you get involved with the Rockefellers? And simply put, Jeffrey said, well, in times past, your family name meant a lot. Who you were associated with gave you instant credit. The world has started to change. Your merit, your skills give you meaning. They needed someone who had significant mathematical ability. That was me. That's what he said. Not so clearly.
And David Rockefeller and I got along very well. He was this unbelievable human being. Respectful to everyone. He introduced his driver as his colleague, not his driver. He would never say, this is my driver. He said, it's my colleague. And David started to explain to me world politics. So David would say, Jeffrey, money is going to be sort of the most important things. People don't understand money. You seem to have this knack for money.
There's two subtle things that I'm going to highlight because I don't think people are, picking them up, and you wouldn't pick these things up unless you knew to look for them. Number one, there's a false modesty that goes on. He's describing another guy. He's saying, he didn't call his driver. He called his driver his colleague. But you already knew his driver was his driver. So when he called his driver his colleague, it was a false show of modesty so that we can look all cool and good, but we all know that's the driver because no one else knows who he is, no one else knows his name, and he's probably dressed like a driver. So, it's playing the game. That's number one. Then number two, he alludes to another thing, which is he's able to try and compliment himself through someone else's mouth. So instead of saying, I'm smart, he says, well, I went to a meeting and, the meeting was buzzing, but when I walked in, Jeff, stopped everything and said, hey, everyone listen to Marquette. Marquette really has something to teach us. So, he's almost using someone else's mouth to aggrandize himself. And this is very strategic because psychologically, we're way more suspicious of what people say about themselves, especially when they speak too well of themselves. This is why reviews mean so much, right? We want to see product reviews. We want to read Yelp reviews. We don't want the restaurant telling us that they're a 5-star. We need someone else to say they're a 5-star. And so that's the level of sophistication that Mr. Epstein is displaying. But to an everyday person, so many of these finer points will escape you. Shout out to Das, comes in my Venmo. He writes, I'm traveling out of the country. Thursday, we call this life. I'm learning from you how to live a life of balance, working hard while still enjoying life. It's critical. I'm trying to fill up some passports like you. I know I've got quite a bit of catching up to do. Peace of the saints, big homie. You have no catching up to do, but you do have the responsibility to maximize your happiness. And it sounds like you're well on your way. Shout out to Mr. Chambliss, writes the Department of Marquette. I also acknowledge shout out to Pawan. He writes, peace of the saints. Thank you, Mr. Burton. Thank you, sir. I also acknowledge Das came back. He writes, what's a small win you're proud of that you recently achieved? I recently decided that I'm going to sue one of my lawyers or sue him or, report him to the ethics committee, do something to him. I'm going to attack him in some way. And the reason I'm very pleased with that is because the worst thing you can do in life is learn slowly or react slowly. It's all about adaptability and moving quickly. And so making the decision of, you know what, I'm going to stop giving this guy a chance to perform and I'm going to attack him. So I like that. And I always advise you to be first to attack. And some people, they never learn until you give them a demo. You could tell someone, hey, I'm a killer. I'll take you out. They still need to see you take somebody out before they believe it. And so That felt really good. I came to that decision late last night. He writes, I want to be as happy as possible, and I understand that it takes being grateful for even the small wins in life. So I really value your perspective. That's correct. And it's also about making progress. And these are the things that we talk about in Boston University, how to design a life. Don't live your life, design a life, and then stick to the script. Shout out to Alejandro, comes in via PayPal, who writes, thank you for always blessing the people. I appreciate you, and thank you for blessing me. Now, so acknowledge Wayne. He writes, peace to the saints for covering this topic. May we all gather info from this. Oh, this is so rich with information. It's very rare that I listen to anything at length. I did listen to this at length, and I'm still willing to go over it with you all, which is only an indication of how rich it is. And the truth is, there are not a ton of smart people that you're going to have access to on a daily basis. This is why I always tell you guys, when people ask me, hey, Marquette, how much is your book? I'm thinking about getting your book. I don't even answer them because it's not worth answering, because I know that this is not an intelligent person. Anytime you buy someone's book, you're always getting a deal. Marquette, what do you mean? Like, it doesn't matter how much the black box costs. Number one, it's actually low cost. But even if it wasn't, it doesn't matter, because if you have an experienced man with unique experience and intelligence, and they take out time to write a book, in my case, it took 10 years, you couldn't sit down with that man and talk to him and get 10 years worth of information. You couldn't afford it. So the fact that they have a book, it gives you so much wealth of information that whatever it costs, you won. You almost cheated them. And similarly, I always tell you guys, people say, hey, Marquette, what book should I read? Or, give me some advice. I said, well, the simplest advice I can give you is be around smart people. Be around intelligent people. Now, intelligent people tend to be, they might feel a little bit rude. They're more blunt. They're more contrarian. But the benefits that you reap from it are extraordinary. It's very well worth it. Very, very well worth it. Shout out to Tony. He writes, peace to saints paying tuition. This world is a wicked place. Bruh, you ain't never lied. Shout out to Nicaragua saying, good to see you again. He writes, peace to the saints. This is a good one. I also acknowledge Wayne. He writes, for the topic, break it down for us once more, MDB. Sir, yes, sir. Shout out to Melvin. He writes, tuition, peace to the saints, showing support. I also acknowledge Kirsten. Writes, support for this good work. Saint Kirsten Enrique Majus here from South Africa. Shout out to my South Africans. And boy, you are in good fortune. Them South African women, bad. You hear me? Shout out to Jalen. He writes, 18 separate businesses is a lot. Yeah, it is a lot, but it's primarily due to the wickedness of the government. You have to do so many things for legal protections, tax benefits, and it causes all of this red tape and foolishness. So it only has to happen like that because our government is filthy. He writes, I respect your hustle for what it's worth. I appreciate you and your work. It has had a huge impact on me. I'm 21 now. I've been following and learning from you since I was 16. I'm looking forward to connecting in person soon. Peace of the saints. I look forward to it as well because, Jalen, I can see great success in your future. So I look forward to seeing what you achieve. Shout out to Brandon. He writes, thank you for this sophisticated dissection of the interview. Each point is explained so clearly that even a 5-year-old could understand. I truly appreciate it. And that's the key to master communication. And also it lets you know that someone truly understands. If someone can't make things simple, they don't truly comprehend. Shout out to Andre. He writes, tuition, peace to the saints.
I said to David, tell me about your life. What was the worst and the best part of your life? So David said, when I grew up, everyone knew I was a Rockefeller. They didn't know that my father told me he would not leave me a dime. No money. But every time we went out to eat, me and my 5 friends in school, they would leave me the bill. They would expect me to pick up the check.
Listen, if you listen to what this man just said, this Rockefeller, which is to say a man who is viewed by others to be wealthy, and in fact he was wealthy. Just because his father said that doesn't mean it's true. Just because he said that his father said that doesn't mean his father said that. But what's important and what we know for sure is true, what I know is true, is he said, I go out to eat with people and then they expect me to pay the check, which is to say other adults, other people, peers expect me to have to pay for them. And I cannot tell you how much that happens when people either think you're well off or they know that you're well off. It's the most unpleasant, uncomfortable thing. It is the quickest way for me to say, I will never deal with this person again. And I always emphasize to you guys, It's in the subtleties that things happen. You see, those who are very sharp and ambitious, you have to be cognizant. You keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. It's the small things you observe. For example, when I hosted Saints Holiday. Now, mind you, Saints Holiday, I can only allow a maximum of, like, say, 35 men to come, and a handful of women, the Lady Saints. So it's a privilege to be there. I refunded a lot of people, and as I was there, everyone's behavior was just really a pleasure to be around. There was one person I observed sitting in my parlor room, and he had his feet up on basically a priceless end table. So he's sitting in a chair and then has his feet up on my end table. And I'm thinking, now, it doesn't matter if the end table costs $3 or if it's a 18th century end table that I bought at an auction. Either way, you don't put your feet on other people's stuff. It's just a dirty thing. And you especially know if you're in a house and you were asked to take off your shoes before you came in, or you were asked to put on shoe covers, you're dealing with people who are clean and have a certain standard, and you put your feet on their end table. It either shows that you're intentionally trying to disrespect someone, which I don't think was the case at all, or you're just very unrefined. You don't have proper manners. And mostly people are not going to take out the time to try to school you because I view you as an adult. You're a grown man. And what'll be more likely than me taking out the time to say, hey man, get your effing feet off my table. What do you think this is? This is not a bar. As opposed to doing that, I'll let you keep your feet on my end table. And when the next event comes, you will not be able to purchase a ticket, and you'll never be able to show up to anything because I don't like the way you conduct yourself in my home, but also I wouldn't want to be seen in public with someone who is unrefined, because it makes me look like less of a gentleman, less of an impressive person to associate with someone who behaves like a barbarian. So these are the subtleties that people miss out on when you're either not bright, not aware, you're too comfortable, you're too slack. And that's why I often tell you guys, be a serious man. A serious man, you might relax, but you don't ever relax all the way, even around your old lady.
Because I was at Rockefeller. And he said, I was chairman of Chase Bank.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I just wanted to mention. Yeah, and so that piece with when the Rockefeller gentleman was saying other people have me pay for their food, he is never going to look at those people as true friends, because those people are users. It doesn't matter if you have $1 billion or you have $1 million. It just doesn't, no one wants to be used and no one wants to be cheated. There have been times I've been out in situations and, even the last time, most recently, I was in the Philippines in Boracay, and the waitress tried to finesse me, and it was for me a petty amount of money, maybe like $13 that I could afford to lose. But it's just the fact of I don't want to be cheated. You see, I'm not going to let you cheat me out of $13. I could be a billionaire. You cheating me for $13 is going to feel the same way, whether I'm a billionaire, a millionaire, or a thousandaire. It's going to feel like some human being does not have regard for me. And that's what people who are unrefined, who are wicked, or who are poor, they cannot comprehend that because their mental space and is so far away. Their finances are so different. Their mindset is so different. They think that just because you're a millionaire, you're a billionaire, or whatever the case is, that you're not human anymore. I even listen to people all the time. They say the most idiotic things. I hear people talk about, Jay-Z or, the political class, and they say, oh, I bet, just when you have that much money, you don't even like to have regular sex. I'm like, what do you think? Like, you get money and you become a mutant? No, P. Diddy probably did all that stuff because he's just so rich. Like, no, goofy, you're a weirdo. He did that because he is a peculiar individual. He didn't do that because he has a lot of money. Do you know how many people there are with a lot of money? They don't have any scandals. They're happily married. Some of them are monogamous. He did that because of who he is as an individual. But some people are so broke, it's almost a sickness. And it's not the financial lack, it's also the mental lack. They think idiotic ideas.
And he said, I remember like it was yesterday, one of the headlines in Time magazine said, David, please fire yourself. So he thought that there was a world that existed that would be a combination of both politics and business and leadership. What do I mean?
Three different things. He said politics, business, and leadership. Those are three different things. He pulled them apart. There's no doubt that there's overlap with those three things. It's really critical. One thing I want you guys to know, when I say Marquettism is for the kids, Marquettism saves lives, so many of the lessons I'm pulling out, I've already put them into pithy phrases that you guys use hopefully every day, not only out of your mouth, but in your practice. For example, when I say pay what you owe. Pay what you owe. Imagine you're sitting with a billionaire, the check comes for the dinner and you're like, oh yeah, I'll let him get it. Who cares that he's a billionaire? Whatever the check costs, maybe $800, is like pennies to him. But the principle is not like pennies. That's why I say pay what you owe. So if you were following this ism and maybe the other fools at the dinner table like, oh, hey, thanks for dinner. And you're like, no, let me pay my portion at the least. But if I'm smart, I might even take you to dinner. You might say, well, what does it mean to pay for a billionaire's dinner? What does it mean to him? He has money. What it means is the gesture, the effort, the consideration, the sacrifice, because he knows you're not a billionaire. So the fact that you're willing to come out of the pocket says something. It means something. And it also shows that you view him as a peer, as an equal, not as someone who's way up here and that he has to take care of you. Come on now. Let's talk about it.
Formed something called the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission is some spooky stuff. People said it was the Illuminati, there's some mystery about it, people that ran the world. It was politicians, but David said most countries, the politicians get elected for 4 years or 8 years, separate from the royal families in England or in the Middle East. Someone's there for 4 years and then they're not there anymore. The most important people to have stability and consistency would be businessmen. So he formed this Trilateral Commission.
Uh-oh. You've heard me say this so many times. I've said America is a plutocracy. Marquette, what is a plutocracy? A plutocracy is a government run by the rich. Who are the rich, Marquette? The rich are the people who earn from paper assets, dividends. These are the people who play in complex financial instruments. You've heard of derivatives and speculation and all of this nonsense. These are those people. These are people who have significant asset holdings. These are the rich, the merchant class. And so what he's saying is, whereas politicians may change, they get voted in, they get voted out. The people who don't change are the people who were rich before and after the president changed. That would be Mark Zuckerberg. That would be Bill Gates. That would be Elon Musk. These are the folks who are consistent despite changes in the public's attitudes, despite changes in fill in the blank. So he's dropping a lot of game here. So he's saying the Rockefeller, who's been rich since ever, is saying, hey, I want to create a cohort of people who are going to be consistent and will be able to guide the ship. These will be business people.
Of businessmen and politicians from 3 major continents. So it was the North Americans, the Europeans, and the Asians. So he said to me, would you like to be on the Trilateral Commission?
Now, he said the North Americans, the Europeans, and the Asians. Asia, this may be inclusive of the Middle East. The Europeans, this is them, the whites, right? Did not include Latin America. It's like these people don't matter. Did not include Africa. These people are backwards. And it's worth noting, you're organizing something to run the world and you're leaving out large swaths of the population. It lets you know how they view things. These are not people who make decisions. These are not people who rule things. These are people who get ruled. Huh? Come on.
Now, I was 30 years old, 32 years old.
That's young.
I said, great.
Wow.
And he said, well, you have to fill out this application so they have your bio. And I looked at the list of people, and it was Bill Clinton, former president of the United States, Paul Volcker, every great leader in America, the Asians, the Japanese, and with a very long description of their history. And they asked me to fill in what I would like to have written. And I wrote Jeffrey Epstein, comma, just a good kid, which I thought was funny. Nobody else did.
No, he didn't think that was funny. Can anyone in the chat let me know why he wrote that? Give you guys a little bit of time. Shout out to Carter. He writes, now I feel like a simpleton for my earlier comment. Let me listen and learn Peace of the Saints. It gets like that. Sometimes we have to take a second look at things, take a fresh look. And, the challenge, as I mentioned, is that there's so much subtlety in what he's communicating and how he's communicating. And as I stated, you would miss it because you wouldn't know to look for it unless you knew to look for it. And that's why experience is such a great teacher. And you cannot find wisdom on Google. You can find information, but you cannot find wisdom. Mr. Buck writes, no accomplishments. Well, it's not no accomplishments. It's just comparatively very few accomplishments. Yes, that's correct. So he knew that he could not compete with former presidents, current prime ministers. And so what he did was, instead of competing and losing, he decided to not compete and remove himself from the competition. Just a good kid, remarking his age, which he's in his early 30s, and he's a part of the Trilateral Commission. That's extraordinarily prestigious, and 30 is very young in the context of ruling a nation or influencing world events. So he uses the term kid to prop up the fact that he's very young, hence not having as long a resume, and he doesn't try to compete on the things that these people are competing on, titles, educational attainment, professional status, because he can't. That is smart. And these are the things I talk about in Boss University, which is about choosing which games you play and thereby also choosing which games you don't play. Come on now. And then he tries to play it off like it's a joke. Like, nah.
So answer to your question, at that time I recognized around the world that monies and currencies were not really well understood. But again, it was only numbers. So numbers, and I'll get to the fact that it was bad thinking. Numbers are very good.
Are most people that you meet, even on Trilateral Commission, when you meet most people, do you find most leaders financially illiterate, economically illiterate?
Most political leaders don't come out of a background of finance. Most political.
This is something I've also mentioned to you many times. It's extraordinary how many times I've said this. You've heard me many times say, you cannot properly lead much of anything, but certainly not a country, unless you are an international businessman, because you otherwise will not understand the world. You will not understand how commerce actually operates. You'll create policies that are detrimental. For example, Barack Obama, when he created the requirement of health insurance, I had to reduce full-time employees. I was a young man at the time, in my early 20s. I had to reduce full-time employees to part-time employees because of that health insurance requirement for full-time people. That hurt people. That hurt my business. There are other things. For example, with Donald Trump, real estate is a bit of a fraudulent business, especially in America, because it has so much leverage and so much debt. It's not a really solid business. Like if you sell, AirPods, you have a real product, you sell it for real money. People don't borrow money to buy it. It's people who decide that it's really important. They spend real money that they actually have. And you have to deal with the realities of the world, not speculation. You don't have to deal with buyers coming in with inflated pockets based on government regulation or government creating money out of thin air, or banks loaning out money that they don't actually have. You're dealing with real basics of the things that actually add value to an economy. I think that's one of the reasons that the Donald has done a terrible job with tariffs. As I've said before, I've shut down a number of businesses, some of which manufacture in Eastern Europe. I've shut down some cosmetic businesses. And so the reason that the Donald has probably made this misstep is because he's not really been a proper businessman. He's been in the entertainment industry and he's been in the real estate industry, huge debt, huge leverage, not the nuts and bolts of real economy. So there you go. And Epstein is echoing precisely what I'm saying, which is number one, that you need to be a business person to understand macro and microeconomics. And also, even beyond that, there's other levels. There's levels of truly understanding currency and how currencies interact with other currencies, how devaluation truly occurs. In fact, how people in the paper assets markets and currency speculation can crash the currencies of entire countries, even if the country had good monetary and fiscal policy. This stuff is highly complex, and it's by design. And there's so many parts to these systems that most people don't understand the whole thing. You might understand the part that you're involved in, but you don't understand the whole thing because it's too much. And most importantly, it's fraudulent. It's fraudulent. So there's so much fraud going on that it doesn't make sense. And the reason it doesn't make sense, because it's not designed to make sense, because there's fraud in the system. Marquette, what do you mean? Well, what do I mean? Okay. America is in trillions of dollars of debt. Well, who lent them the money? Other countries. Okay. Some of these other countries that lent America the money are also in debt. Who lent them the money? It's like when you keep chasing the dollar, you find out that it's all a scam. It's extraordinary. It makes no sense. But we'll get into it.
Leaders come out of a background of being popular. So in some of the countries, in the African countries, for
Now listen to this. Also notice the way he uses African countries as a reference point.
example, they might have been a military person. They were a general. In some of the African countries, they might have been a disc jockey. Or in our country.
Now that was crazy. He said in some African countries, they may have been a disc jockey, a DJ, a person who spins music. I don't think he's talking about anything else. Now, I think this comes from at a level of ignorance, and this is why I remind you that though someone may be highly intelligent, that doesn't mean everything they say is going to be intelligent. And also, we're limited based on our experience and our biases. And emotion and irrationality can overwhelm our ability to reason. I can't, and I know Africa and African politics pretty well. I would even say much better than Mr. Epstein, and we can see that he never gives any specific case points in Africa, which is due to lack of knowledge. This is very typical with the European. But the fact of the matter is, he says in Africa, you might be a disc jockey and become president. What? Which is curious because the Donald was a celebrity and then became president. Ronald Reagan was an actor, then became president. And your favorite, Zelensky, was a comedian and then became president. But he seems to suggest that the goofy Africans, they just let you become president because you can play good music. Extraordinary. And it shows a willful blindness on the fact that he could have given that very example in his own country or in the country that we also send a lot of funds to. So that tells you a lot about the way folks think. But beyond complaining about that, the reality has to also change, that we do need to see good governance in the continent of Africa. And I think there have been a lot of great leaders, but mostly they're not ruthless enough. And that's really been their true shortcoming. It hasn't been that they're not smart. It's been that they're too nice. And that's to the outsiders. Shout out to Mr. Chambliss. He writes, thankfully, most men that I've known have not asked me to help pay for their meals, right? Sometimes I offer it. Ironically, I've paid some things for a particular man who earned a ton of money for a few years and was around some famous people. Yeah, and hopefully everyone is always trying to repay. And some people don't say thank you. I think that's very tacky. Women do it all the time, but when men do it, it's even worse. He writes, now a few women, on the other hand, have demanded that I pay for some things without them ever paying for anything for me. One woman was even a financial broker. Those people are always broke. Thankfully, I sent those women on the straight path out of there. Yeah, you got to. And that's beautiful. They taught you who they are early. Shout out to Emmanuel supporting the work, writes Peace of the Saints tuition. Shout out to Mr. Gardner, writes Peace of the Saints tuition. May I also acknowledge Dominic. Came in a strong way via PayPal. He writes, Peace of the Saints. I respect the work. As a 20-year-old myself, you are a true inspiration to young men like me. Thank you. Wow, this man is very mature. I didn't know this young man. Now, he does look 20 in the face, but his maturity, I didn't know he was only 20. Also, Dominic, if you recall, I said, request $200 from me on PayPal. So, I owe you that. I agreed to give you that. Shout out to Kirsten, you don't have to take it if you don't want to, but just a reminder in case you forgot. I know sometimes people forget things. Kirsten writes, I'm about to go for a 30-minute run. We'll catch the full replay when I return. Thank you for teaching us to pray every day. Saying, oh, absolutely. And you guys inspire me. I really, it's one of my favorite messages that I get from you guys, those who are members, that is. If you're not a member, I don't want to hear from you. I'm not a celebrity. I don't want to hear from fans. But if you are a member, I like to hear from you. If you have a serious question, you can message on wisdom.com/MarquetteDevon. I'll make sure I get back to you. But those are the things I love to see. I love to hear about you guys doing well and investing in yourselves. Shout out to Kevin. He writes, sending my support. It's been a good while. There's a lot of game here. Oh, you better believe it. There's a lot of game here. Shout out to International L1 or INTL1 came in with the super chat. We appreciate you. Thank you for supporting the work.
They would have been an actor. The knowledge of money they don't have expertise, they have no degrees in finance. They really, and this is one of the major problems. Their expertise, if they have any financial knowledge, is of their own checking account or bank account and filling in their own taxes. So many world leaders who don't really have a financial underpinning make fundamental errors.
So the funny thing is, I don't know if he was being hyperbolic or if he really meant that. And it's hard to say without knowing him well and without having heard him talk in other instances and getting footage of him speaking directly that's not been doctored or AI is quite difficult. But he suggested that world leaders, the extent of their financial knowledge goes all the way up to them managing their own bank account, their own checkbook, and maybe filing their taxes, which means that they know nothing. And this is certainly a strong slap in the face to the people he's met, which would consist of George Bush, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, people who are very well known, popular, have been very powerful, and in some cases are really impressively educated. In the case of Bill Clinton, he's a Rhodes Scholar, which is a very impressive academic designation. And still, Mr. Epstein says, these people don't know anything.
When it comes to money on a country or institutional level. Let me give you an example. If you, Mr. Bannon, if I said your assets increased last year, you'd say, that sounds pretty good.
Try to track this example, okay? So he said, if you, Mr. Bannon, which is to say an individual person, if I say your assets increased last year, you would reply, that's good. So please try to track this.
And I said, what does that mean to you? You'd say, well, I have more money. I guess I'm wealthier. I'd say, yes. And if your debt increased.
Well, he said, you would say, Mr. Bannon, I have more money. I'm wealthier. Now, assets don't necessarily represent money as much as monetary value. And I know it's a fine difference. So that's one thing that's worth noting. And assets are at a level better than money. We can get into that later.
Would you feel wealthier or poorer?
Can you rewind that? I don't want you guys to miss anything.
And if your debt increased, would you feel well?
I'm gonna rewind that again. I'm sorry. I just really want you guys to understand this. He says, if your debt increased. Now notice we're starting to talk about debt. You heard me mention debt earlier. You hear me talk about debt an awful lot. And debt is a part of this very evil system that has been erected globally. This is not capitalism. This is something else. This is usury. This is wickedness. This is financial wizardry. This is not capitalism. So you often hear people angry at what they think is capitalism, but what they're angry at is usurious interest rates. They're angry at credit card companies. I understand. They're angry at banks being predatory. They're not angry at capitalism. They don't understand that there is degree and variation to all things. You might have one communist system that has an economy with some market features. They respect the market at a level. You may have another communist economy that's completely centrally planned. You may have one capitalist economy that's it's wholly deregulated, like the UAE. You may have another one that's highly regulated, like the United Kingdom. So there is degree and variation to things, and it is only those who have experience with something who can recognize degree and variation, which is why the example is often given with Eskimos. They have many different words for snow because snow is what they know. Snow has been a part of their life always. They have to be able to define the different types of snow. Whereas if you grew up in California, you maybe know the difference between, white snow and yellow snow. Yellow snow means don't touch it, right? But the degree and variation of certain economic systems is what most people fail to understand. And according to Mr. Epstein, this would include those people who are in charge of those systems.
You'd say, that sounds pretty good. And I'd say, what does that mean to you? You'd say, well, I have more money. I guess I'm wealthier. I'd say, yes. And if your debt increased, would you feel wealthier or poorer? You'd say, well, I don't want to have increased debt. I don't like the idea of that sound, increased debt. Now, that and world leaders understand when their assets go up, they feel better. However, institutions like banks.
Now, this is an important transition. So he talked about an individual, Mr. Bannon, then he talked about world leaders, and now he's moving on to institutions. Okay, he's moving on to institutions. So this is an important note.
Things that people don't really understand is debt. Now, that and world leaders understand when their assets go up, they feel better. However, institutions like banks, things that people don't really understand are financial underpinnings of banks. When I say your bank, Mr. Bannon, you have the Bannon Bank, you doubled your assets.
Now, he used the word underpinnings, and I appreciate that he used the word because it was proper diction. It's like kind of the support, the thing that's holding up the bank, something that's foundational and fundamental to the bank. So he's correct. He's about to elaborate on that. Shout out to World Gone Mad supporting the Super Chat. Writes, Peace of the Saints, great game being dropped tonight. Oh, indeed. And we really got to get into the details here.
Sounds good, but what does it really mean? It means people owe you more money.
Now, this is as a bank. As a bank, people, meaning individuals, humans, citizens, they owe you, the bank, more money. That's a good thing.
You doubled your assets. Sounds good, but what does it really mean? It means people owe you more money. You don't have any money, more money. What? Yeah. A bank's assets are how much it is owed by other people.
Okay? He said a bank's assets are how much it is owed by other people. They're money lenders. Their product is not something useful that you can touch. Their product are financial vehicles, or excuse me, financial products. Their product, you can't touch it, you can't drive it, you can't eat it, can't use it to listen to other people. So a bank's product is a financial product. A bank's assets are the debts that are owed to them. Come on now. We're getting into it now. Yeah.
That's crazy. So if the bank goes from a $2 billion of assets to $10 billion, it means people owe it an additional $8 billion, but their assets have gone up. So the terminology of assets and liabilities is different for banks. It's not natural. And what most...
Now, let me tell you something that needs to blow your mind. I'm going to connect this to something he did not connect this to. So one of the reasons I love cash money is because cash money is real. And you'll observe in certain places, and you guys know I travel extensively and I don't even take pictures and post anymore. But there are certain markets I've looked at real estate, many of which I had to change my mind because one particular country started bombing the place. I was looking in Doha, then this country bombed them, and I'll say, okay, I think I'm good on that one. I was looking in Lebanon, and these guys bombed them too, but in Lebanon, they had a financial crisis, which is not something that doesn't occur in the world. It does occur mostly when America puts sanctions on your country. See Cuba, see Zimbabwe, see Venezuela, see Iran. But anyways, in Lebanon, they had such a serious issue with their monetary system that everyone wanted to go withdraw their money at the same time. From where? The banks. Now, I'm not talking about debt right now. I'm talking about the money you put into the bank in your savings account or your checking account. It's there, right? Your money's there, right? Well, yes, but no. Yes, but no. I figured this out a long time ago based on personal experience. Most people don't have enough money. They don't move enough money to find out. For example, I remember one time going into the bank and either I would go myself or sometimes I would send my assistant. And there were times I wanted certain amounts of money to do certain activities that I had planned in Las Vegas. And I wanted cash money. So there was one time I sent my assistant to the bank, and this is right off of Sahara Boulevard in Las Vegas, not too far from the Strip. I sent her there to fetch $40,000 cash. And they told her they couldn't give it to her. And I thought, that doesn't make sense, because that's like going to Starbucks and they can't give you a coffee. All Starbucks does is coffee. It's like going to Dunkin' Donuts and they can't give you a donut. You go to a bank, how can they not give you money? This is what they do. They deal in money. All they have is money. They don't have anything else but money. It's a bank. Where's the money? And over time, I realized that their goal is to limit you as much as possible in you pulling your money out of the bank. So the bank's goal is for you to keep your money in the bank. I've even had banks, mostly for political reasons, I've had banks close my accounts. But in some cases, I have banks close my accounts because the money moves too much. They don't like your money to move. They like your money to stay put and sleep. Sometimes you might say, I'm gonna put my money in a CD. I'll put my money in one of these instruments, and the bank requires you to not touch the money for 6 months or to 2 years or 3 years, and they'll give you out 3% interest or whatever silly little thing they give you. All the while they'll loan your money out at a 20% interest rate to the borrower, who's someone else like you, a citizen. So they can't have you touching your money a lot because the money that they're lending to other people is your money. So if you come in and withdraw too much of your money, then they can't lend out money because they're using your money. Now you should ask yourself, well, damn, why can't I lend out my own money? Because the government won't let you. Yes, the government regulates it for the purpose of keeping some people in the game and other people out of the game. It's just like gambling. Why can't I open up a gambling hall at my house? Well, the government regulates it. You have to have a gambling license. When you go to the bank and you withdraw between like $9,000 plus, there's something called the Secrecy in Banking Act. I think that's what it's called, where every transaction over about 9 to 10,000 over that is reported to the United States government. Why? It's my money. And why does the government and the banks want you to use the bank as opposed to just like keeping your money at your house or in a safe? Well, because it allows them to control you and control your money. There have been times I was out buying stuff and I might hit a purchase limit. Maybe it's like 15K per swipe. I might call them like, hey, I need to swipe for 32K or whatever the case is. And they'll say, oh, we'll see if we can raise your limit. I was like, what do you mean see if you can raise my limit? It's literally my money. It's actually, all of it is my money. What do you mean see if you could allow me to spend my money? What are you talking about? That's what the bank does. Now, I've told you guys before, banks are government institutions. Come on now. I've always said it. You guys think banks are private. And I've always said banks are government institutions. Now, mind you, you're going to hear people repeating that in the near term because they didn't comprehend that before I said it. And I said that many years ago. Banks are government institutions. The government controls them, heavily regulates them, funds them, and controls them. Now, here's a comical thing. If the government, it's kind of, I think of them interchangeably, but if the government decides to have a problem with you, maybe they're going to put you on trial for something, right? The government decides that you're a criminal, maybe. Even though it's innocent until proven guilty, what is the government going to do? They're going to freeze your assets, mostly your money, right? So they're going to freeze your bank accounts, which means all of a sudden you went from having $30 million to literally having just the money in your pocket. What? Nigga, what? Yeah, now you're not a multimillionaire. You're just a nigga with $80. And here's the comedy. You're innocent until proven guilty, but the government freezes your accounts. Now you have to use a public defender because you can't afford an attorney. So they're stifling your ability to actually protect and represent yourself in a system that is fundamentally and inherently unfair. Now, do you understand why they want you to use the banks in addition to many reasons? It's control. That's why they hate paper money. They want to get away from paper money. But let me tell you another reason that the government wants to get away from paper money. And when I say the government, I also mean the banks. Peep this. Peep this. If banks are these dishonest institutions that maybe they take $100 from me when I put it in my bank account, in my savings account, and they think, oh, it's in his savings account, he's not going to spend it. Then they turn around and give $1,000 loan to somebody else. Well, they can only do that when the money is not paper money. It's just numbers in a computer, because numbers in a computer are not real. You could just change the numbers. But if it was all paper money and I handed the bank $100 and then somebody else went into the bank to borrow money, the bank could only loan them up to $100 because they actually have to hand them some money. But in the absence of handing them money, what they do is just change some numbers on a screen. Then easy work, easy to cheat, easy to defraud, because there's no real palpable, tangible value. Come on now. Come on now. Look at this dweeb. This guy has it backwards. It's the bankers who use the government as an instrument to give themselves a monopoly. What are the chances this dweeb is smarter than I am? What are the chances this dweeb has more money than I do? What are the chances this dweeb has banked in as many countries as I have? It's very low. But I tell you what, I am more than happy to learn from you. Send in, let me change the banner. You can send in your $20 here. I'll let you come on screen and explain to me what is correct. You can use Venmo or PayPal. Just send in your email address and then I'll let you come on screen and educate us. Carrying on.
People, and you ask questions about world leaders. There's many people, I think your old boss Mercer understood. There's a fundamental part of money, which is called fractionalized banking. And fractionalized banking is something that finance people understand, and the people on the street, and when I say people on the street, that's where I was when I started on Wall Street, would find it impossible to believe. Impossible. Why? Bannon Bank, I give you $1, just one single dollar. In our system of banking, I would say, okay, Steve, I gave you $1. How much could you lend out to your friends? And your natural reaction would be probably something less than $1 because I want to keep something in my pocket. The way our system works is if you as a bank are holding my dollar, you can lend out an additional $8 or $9.
Now, here's the important thing to understand. This only works if you're not using exclusively paper money. Because if you were using gold coins or paper money, you'd have to actually be able to hand the person real value. So everything that we're dealing with is complete falsehood and phoniness and fakery. It's all false. I did a talk years ago and I forget what it was called. It was really brilliant, which wouldn't make it unique. And I explained to you that my favorite thing about money is that it allows you to enslave people and they do it willingly. You don't have to beat them anymore. They'll beat themselves. And the neat thing is that if I hand you $1 to get you to do something for me, I won, you lost. Marquette, how's that? Well, if I hand you $1 and you hand me a real Rolls Royce, then I handed you something that kind of is fake and has no real utility, especially if worst comes to worst. You handed me a Rolls Royce. I can drive it. I could, worst case scenario, I could live in it. I could use it to make more money if I needed to. It has many values that I can extract from it in a worst case scenario situation. And the true, like, people talk about depreciation, but the truth is that a dollar can depreciate all the way literally to zero. Literally, it can actually depreciate to nothing, which happened to the Deutschmark, which happened to the currency in Zimbabwe. Not all the way nothing, just close, right? Conversely, a Rolls Royce may depreciate, but as long as it can drive, as long as it runs, it'll never depreciate to nothing. So if you have $1 million Rolls Royce or $1 million in the US currency, depending on the macroeconomic environment, depending on monetary policy, the Rolls Royce could be much more valuable than the $1 million. It's the better side of the deal to be on. But more importantly, it is impossible for the Rolls Royce to ever go down to zero in terms of value. However, it is totally possible for the US dollar paper money to literally go down to zero. That's what you guys have to understand. And that's why I was explaining to you guys that when you can use money to do anything, you won. You won. Because you're basically giving someone nothing, and in return, they're going to give you something. You see? That's why I don't trip on money. And that's why I try to teach you guys in courses like Boss University and whatever other courses I have that are money focused. I try to give you guys a better sense of understanding money mentally and spiritually. Then you can be an investor, then you can leverage it, and you can really put it to work so that you can live in a godly way, a part of the master class instead of like a peon, okay?
No, it's impossible. I only have $1, Jeffrey. We have something called fractionalized reserves, which is if you have 1, you can lend out 9. That's the way our system works. And so not only do world leaders not understand banking, but the man on the street, my father who worked in the park department, it would be beyond his imagination that people could lend out more money than they actually had in their pocket.
Because that requires lying, and it requires robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're creating a system that is fundamentally unstable. It's a house of cards. It should be actually illegal. There's no doubt that it's immoral, but it should additionally be illegal. Shout out to St. Clair supporting the work using the Stripe link. May I also acknowledge another person came in anonymously using the Stripe link. I appreciate you. Shout out to the real ones. I also acknowledge Kristen. He writes, "Peace of Saints. Fair enough. I hear that. Appreciate you. May I also acknowledge Wayne. He writes, for the breakdown, keep going. Sir, yes, sir. May I also acknowledge Nicaragua. He writes, thank you for the insight. You are very welcome. And shout out to Dominic. He writes, peace of saints. I'll request it after this lecture. Absolutely. Thank you again regarding this live. Epstein should have wrote a book on networking. The man knew everyone. People, places, positions. Absolutely. And, you know, there's always one part knowledge, and then there's the other part, which is hustle. It's how proactive are you? How much are you about your issue? Shout out to Reginald supporting the work. He writes, thank you. Came in via PayPal. Appreciate you. And shout out to those real ones. We always say pay what you owe within this thing of ours. John writes, supporting this great work straight away. Appreciate you. Luis writes, Mr. Burton, after my intro video is confirmed for review, it will be my pleasure to have joined the Sasson Los Angeles. Shout out to Mr. Chris for reaching out to me and guiding me along the way. Sass or nothing. Oh, absolutely. And for those of you who haven't joined, this is a great time to join at the beginning of the month. You can go to peacetothesaints.com and hit the join button. We will welcome you warmly within this thing of ours. Jamal writes, thank you, came in via PayPal. And I also acknowledge Miles. He writes, peace of saints, the game is so abundant, I'm going to have to rewatch this. Oh, absolutely. He writes, I haven't bought the Book of Dark Truths yet, but imagine it is akin to this. If so, I have to save up ASAP and purchase it. Extremely interesting. Thank you, Mr. Burton. Hope all is well with you. Life is good. Shout out to Edwidge. Good to see you. he writes, nothing, just came in supporting the work. And shout out to SAS in Canada.
Next question.
But how did this, in understanding that, when you get on something like the Trilateral Commission, you're on the board at Rockefeller, which is the most advanced research. You get brought into the Trilateral, which is the elite of the elite. How, since you're only at that time
30-something years old.
8 years from teaching at Dalton, right? You're a Dalton.
No, 10 years.
10 years
right.
teaching at Dalton.
Yes.
Walk us through. I mean, put us in the room. Walk me through exactly what it felt like. What it felt like being on the board at Rockefeller. You got these Nobel laureates, and you're sitting there making decisions, and you start to meet these people at Rockefeller. And you start to meet these people at the Trilateral Commission. What did it feel like?
It's a great question. So what did it feel
That's
like?
what I'm in the business of asking.
What did it feel like meeting some of these people like Kissinger or Rockefeller? And those were two extraordinary people. But in general, I think the question, the people on Wall Street, I tell the story, the first day, one of the first days when I was in Wall Street, someone said to me, would you like to buy ATV? And I was looking in the brochure, and I couldn't figure out what stock had a symbol of ATV.
This is actually quite funny. I really enjoy this one. Hopefully this one is not getting by you guys.
And when I finally said, well, I can't find it, and they said, what's the matter with you? Do you want to buy a TV? Which is, he was selling hot televisions, stolen televisions from the floor of the American Stock Exchange, referred to in common parlance as the televisions fell off the truck.
Now, where was Jeffrey Epstein born? Because the way he said that, from the floor of the American Stock Exchange, it just doesn't feel like the way an American would talk or describe things. I'm gonna have to look up where this man was born.
Truck. So I knew what that phrase meant from Coney Island. But what I found was most people, be it in business, in normal life, or in the world leaders, don't really understand money. It is something they think about. They have a sense of what it is. They certainly want more of it. But they also make statements like, we want more money, but we don't want more debt, which just shows a misunderstanding of what money at its core really is. So they.
Now, I want to clarify, if you don't mind, when he says people want more money, but they don't want more debt, he says this shows a misunderstanding of what money is at its core. I would even suggest the nuance of saying of what money has become. I don't think that's actually what money is or what money should be or what money was meant to be, but there's a certain group of people, banksters and others, that have turned money into this. And what Jeffrey Epstein is pointing out that middle-class people will never accept, poor people will never comprehend, is that because the money system is so contrived, the poor people don't want debt. They get the worst type of debt. The wealthy people take on debt, which is to say it gives you more spending power. And when you spend the money on the things you actually want, you win, especially if you do the clever thing of not paying the debt back. Marquette, what? You get the debt and don't pay it back? Yeah, you remember Donald Trump? You heard of him, right? You ever hear him filing for bankruptcy? That's getting the money, using the money, and not paying the money back. That's a W. Or you heard of the United States government, trillions of dollars in debt. Do they ever plan to pay it back? You look at the last 5 presidents, doesn't seem like it. So, come on now. This is Book of Dark Truths right here.
Most people don't, they want to make it, they want to save it, but to understand it intimately is not a normal characteristic.
At the first trilateral.
The heck?
Or something.
Yeah, good. You're good.
Just give me approximate. You joined the Trilateral
I
Commission.
think it might be
And we'll be able to show we'll pull down the chart of where your name was, but just give me roughly when it was.
I think it could be 90. I don't remember.
Okay. Let's say
Sorry.
early 90s.
Yes.
When you got on the Trilateral Commission and had the first, do you remember where the first meeting was?
It was in Tokyo.
In Tokyo. And at what hotel?
I would like to say the Hilton, but it's probably not.
And it's a 3-day, 4-day? Give me some.
Three-day event, and it
Walk me
was
through the whole thing.
Speeches.
It starts with a dinner. Just walk me through it.
It was boring.
You couldn't possibly think it was boring. It's
It was
bullshit.
boring.
You had to
No,
be stars
sorry.
in your eyes.
No.
Did you fly over privately?
Yes, but it wasn't my plane.
So it didn't count?
No.
Now, this is baller humor. No one's laughing out loud, but it's still funny. There's a quote that I've used on my annual Martin Luther King speech, and it is that all men are ordinary. It is the extraordinary man who knows this. And the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was among so many heavy hitters, champions in academia, leaders in industry, titans in politics, yet he wasn't impressed or starstruck. Well, that's because he was able to deal with the fact that these are just men like myself. We're all human and we are peers. I can compete here. I can perform here. These are the kind of, critical lessons in self-development that we go through in Boss University, because you'll never be a boss unless you first respect yourself as a boss. And when you respect yourself as a boss, you can stand toe-to-toe with any man. And Bannon is essentially asking him, well, how could you, feel like not constantly being in awe of all these other humans? And Epstein's like, because they're humans.
You fly over.
Yes.
And
it was
who were the first, like when you first met those leaders, you had to be wowed.
No.
You're 10 years out of Coney Island.
No, I'm not wowed by people of position. I'm wowed by people of great ideas. And I don't care if it's the bus driver. I don't care if it's the student I had who has teeth coming out
Well,
every
these
direction.
guys have to have great ideas. They're the leaders of the 3 great continents of the world: North America, Europe, and Japan.
No, many of these world
Japan is not a continent, my dear boy. But anyways, shout out to Dax. He writes, yep, I remember being shocked, but not surprised that accumulating debt to the point where you are too big to fail. There you go, bingo. A high net worth, having $1 million in assets, you took a loan out for $100K, should be $100K in debt. To a degree, high debt should equal high assets and net worth. Tricksters, oh yeah. Listen, man, it's an evil world. Shout out to Francisco. He writes, peace of the saints. I was anticipating this breakdown. Thank you for your work. I appreciate you. You are welcome. And thank you to all of those men who stand up, make their name known. Carrying on.
leaders become world leaders because they're popular and they were able to get votes, or they were able to convince people to vote for them. I learned later. Many of them were just good at what they did in terms of politics. Remember, world leaders are politicians in general. They're not scientists, they're not intellectuals, they're not great thinkers, they're great politicians.
Ooh, he sounds familiar. Doesn't that sound like what I say sometimes? Like, these guys are podcasters. They're good at entertaining. They're not revolutionaries. Don't I sometimes say that? These guys are babblers, but they're not able to create ideology. They don't have ideas. Come on now. Come on now. He's basically saying that politicians are those who can appeal to the commoner, and the commoner is not very impressive. So I really am not impressed with the fact that you could get millions of commoners to think that you're important, because commoners are easily fooled. That's essentially what he's saying. One thing that he said that's not true, and you often hear people with the fake displays of modesty, the fake, suggestion that they're egalitarian, and they're not. These people are deeply elitist. And he says, I respect good ideas, even if it comes from the bus driver. Yeah, you would respect a good idea if it came from a bus driver, but 9 out of 9, you won't give the bus driver any airtime, because you know that it's unlikely that he's going to give you an idea that is going to shake things up for you. So 9 out of 9, you're not going to be around a bus driver. 9 out of 9, you wouldn't listen to a bus driver sincerely. So you just say that to emphasize the fact that you're really focused on ideas, but the truth is the person, or as I've said, the speaker matters. Come on now.
solutions.
At the first Trilateral Commission meeting that you remember in Tokyo in sometime in the early 90s, do you remember what were the big issues of the day that they were talking about, and what did you think about it?
Yeah, in fact, it was funny because they were talking about inflation, and they were worried that what would happen, how do you control inflation? And as a mathematician, I didn't understand the concept. I don't understand the concept today. How's that possible? Well, when you talk about most things to do with money.
Now, mind you, this is funny. Now, it's also worth noting that he describes himself as a mathematician, not an economist. And perhaps if he did describe himself as an economist, we'd have to hold his feet to the fire on that. But at a level, we know that he's kind of teasing and joking while also being serious. One note I'll make unrelated to what he's saying with regards to inflation, the reason this whole system is a scam is that inflation is embedded into the system because the system at a certain level has to react to human psychology. And human psychology demands more and bigger, especially in the context of the United States of America. So for example, if I bought a Rolls Royce, or let's not use the Rolls Royce, if I bought a eVTOL or a helicopter, so go with the helicopter example. No, let's go with a private jet. If I buy a private jet in 2020 and I buy it for $1 million, and then the second generation of the private jet comes out in 2021, I expect to pay more for it, maybe 1.1 million. And then the third generation comes out in 2022. I expect to pay more for it because it's better, it's bigger, so I have to pay more because I perceive it to be more valuable because it's more costly. If the price stagnated or went down, I'd kind of be spooked out. It'd be counterintuitive. So the price has to go up even if the cost of materials don't go up, even if the technology improves or the manufacturers become more efficient, they're going to increase the price. And also, businesses are profit driven, so they're incentivized to increase the price, and consumers are even incentivized to want to pay more. And if prices constantly have to rise, then of course inflation must occur. And that's an oversimplification, but I think you guys should understand my point. So inflation is built into the system. The moment you have capitalism that has no ethical component, then you're always going to have price gouging, and then you're going to call it the market. You're going to have product obsolescence, which I just recently did a lesson on that for our AI, no coding required, no experience required course, where I teach people how to create applications, whether it's a mobile application or a web application. And I was teaching them things about revenue model, because that's what's really critical. How do you make money off of this technology? Not how do you build it, but how do you make money off of it? And product obsolescence is a concept everyone should know, should learn about on the businessman side and also on the consumer side. But of course, it's kind of book of dark truths type knowledge, and that's why people suffer for their ignorance.
Money is meant to be local. It's US dollars. Then I understand what it means. If inflation, it means my dollar today inflates and it doesn't buy as much as it did a couple of years ago. The prices go up. It seems that everything is great, but in fact my dollar is shrinking in value.
If you
Okay, now here's something that I never hear anybody talk about, and we know that it theoretically exists. It's kind of like Bigfoot. You've heard of it, never seen it. Okay, folks in the chat, let's see if you're awake. We've heard of inflation. What's the opposite of inflation? Give you guys a little bit of time. This should be a quick one. Come on now. What's the opposite of inflation? Deflation. That's right, deflation. Now, do we ever hear about deflation? Why does deflation never occur? Why? We all know the word deflation. I think we get the concept of deflation. Why doesn't deflation occur? They say, the government, the banksters, they say that inflation occurs from, and they give an oversimplified explanation, which has truth to it. In the chat, why do they say inflation occurs? What does the government do that causes inflation? Shout out to Dax. Came in via Venmo. He writes, a politician's job is to get elected. That's right. Not usher in change or protect a kingdom or do well for their people. And in a job, you're supposed to make as much money as possible. Ooh, that was deep. Of course, they're going to get elected and figure out how to move the tax dollar to their pockets. Peace and saints. Shout out to Nancy Pelosi, May. Shout out to Nancy. That's right. Printing money, money printing. Now, okay, now this is why Marquette is a genius. Okay, so if inflation is created by printing money, listen to me, Marquette, you're the smartest guy I've ever met in my whole life. You're a genius, Marquette. If inflation is created by printing money, where am I going with this? How do you create deflation? How do you create deflation? Come on. How do you create deflation? Because we want to stop inflation, right? How do you create deflation if money printing creates inflation? Then stop printing the money. Yeah, that's right. Just stop printing it. And that should inevitably cause deflation if what they're saying is true. If what they're saying is true, then if printing money causes inflation, if you don't print money, if you stop printing money, it will cause deflation and it'll fix the issues. Should be that simple. But it's not, because somebody's lying. Huh? Yeah, somebody's lying.
And you're the financial genius here. I'm just a lowly M&A guy.
Sure. If you let me finish the thought.
Go ahead.
So if you're in America, you can feel inflation. Your salary's gone up, but you can't buy the same car. In fact, it starts to feel weird because the value.
That's why I wanted to ask the question then. This is my point.
Sure.
The people who live and breathe this, the central banks, have been haunted by the specter of inflation since the late 70s.
Yes.
And what happened in the late 70s? Is that when America, was it Nixon maybe? I don't know, I'm just guessing. Just throwing darts at the board. Is that when the dollar got off of the gold standard? And also, let's take a quick look at ChatGPT. I just opened this up and asked it a question, So let's just take a look here. I said, why doesn't the government stop printing money to stop inflation? That seems like a reasonable question based on what you hear in the popular narrative. What printing money actually means today, modern governments don't usually print physical cash to fund spending. Inflation-relevant money creation mainly occurs through central bank actions. The Federal Reserve, we've heard a lot of talk about the Fed. Buying government bonds. What the hell is that, right? What is a government bond? Quantitative easing. Oh, what the hell is that? Lowering interest rates. I thought the banks make their own interest rates. What the hell is going on? Commercial bank lending. Banks create new money when they issue loans. They create money. The banks create money. I thought the Federal Reserve created the money. And the other question that I'm asking myself is, how in the hell don't I understand any of this? Why wasn't there a course on this in middle school and high school and university? Why does it seem like they almost don't want you to understand? Yes. Why is it so complex? There's the Fed, there's the banks, and there's the government. Those are three separate heads on one dragon. I say that we need a revolution, and people say, Marquette, you should run for president. You don't understand how bad the situation is. You do not understand how bad the situation is. You see, the streets must run red because the current financial system benefits some of the least productive elements of society. Marquette, what are you talking about? The rich people are the productive ones. Some of them. Like Jeff Bezos, very productive. He's made life better for a lot of people. Jeff Bezos should be remembered in the history books. But then you got Warren Buffett. Marquette, no, you're not about to talk about Warren. Yes, Warren Buffett, one of the least productive people. What do you mean he's a billionaire? Berkshire Hathaway. Yeah, what do they do? What do they do? What's the product or service? Like, how do you use it How does it improve someone's life? Like, I can tell you how Amazon improves people's lives. If you're sick as a dog, you need some cough syrup, you can't even go outside, you order and Amazon will bring it to your doorstep. Boy, that's a major value add. What does Berkshire Hathaway do that's a value add? They move around money. Literally, they move around fiat currency on computers. It is no value add, but they're billionaires doing that. So if you wanted to change a system, the unethical capitalist system, and I am pro-capitalism, but if you wanted to change the unethical, usurious nature of capitalism today, people who are billionaires by doing nearly nothing would probably spend hundreds of millions to stop you from changing the system. They might even put a little money on your head to stop you from changing that system. The idea that people who have power are just going to give it up, they're just going to do the right thing. No. And here's the worst part. It's so hard to get someone who's smart and talented to get into office and do the right thing because there's every incentive not to do the right thing. Marquette, what do you mean? Well, don't you guys want to be famous and rich and well known? Get into office, play along with the system. You're going to be rich, famous, and well known. Why rock the boat? Why set yourself up to be assassinated when you could just go along with things and become a part of the ruling class? Why try to eliminate the ruling class when you can just join them? Come on. And I've stated this before, that the intelligentsia is able to operate in the current system successfully, so they're not incentivized to change the system. That's why yesterday someone, maybe that was earlier today, someone said, Marquette, you're insane. I say, I'm completely insane. I'm in a very strong position. It makes no good sense that I argue against the system. I'm benefiting from the system. Like, the system's working for me. I'm in a hotel suite right now and I have a private pool, which is outside of is actually not a public pool. It's a pool for VIP guests, but not every VIP guest has their own private pool. I have my own private pool and a private courtyard. And when people walk by to the spa, they look like, well, what the heck is that? I'm doing really well. So why would I try to shake up the system? It's exactly why it doesn't make sense that poor white folks voted for Donald Trump thinking that he was going to clean out the swamp. He is the swamp. I voted for Donald Trump specifically because I thought that he would keep me rich. That's why I voted for him. This nigga took money out my pocket. Boy, I'm paying the Illuminati to take bro out now. I'm putting my money with that country to release the Epstein files on this boy now. Come on now. Yeah, pay attention. You see, it's really, if you pay attention, you'll see what's going on. If you listen, you'll hear Nerd Fuentes. He used to be against these people. He used to be against Epstein. Now he's over here saying, Epstein was dealing with women who are teenage girls, like 14, 15. That's not pedo. That's not. Oh, okay, interesting. It seems like you're backpedaling here. Why is that? You hear Top G. I got a Bugatti and I just do business deals with the Israelis and I have good business partners, so I don't have anything bad to say about them. What? I don't know. Well, interesting. You kind of changed up your tune there. And you're going to see more and more of it because they have to confront the possibility of becoming nameless and penniless. And then they realize, oh, I like being famous and I like my Bugatti. I think I'll keep it. You see, that's why Jesus is such an impactful figure. Shout out to Azimi, 9388, supporting with Super Chat. I appreciate you. Jesus is a remarkable figure, and I almost never bring up Jesus because Christianity and religion broadly is usually not a good thing. But the story of Jesus, let's just deal with the story. When he says, a bird has a nest, a fox has a hole. I, the Son of Man, have nothing. Leave everything you have and follow me, he who has nothing. He's saying, all of your possessions, all of your money, just leave it now. Leave it away now. because on this road, you cannot carry it with you. And that is the fundamental ethos of a revolutionary. You know they're going to strip you of your wealth. They're going to strip you of your reputation. They're going to throw dirt and slander your way. They're going to try to harm your family members. They're going to scare your wife. They're going to make it hard to have children. They're going to do all of these things to take away your peace and happiness. And you'd be wise to just shed it before they can do it. Just shed it. Give up all the things you have and follow me. That's bro was locked in. You heard me? And here's the thing, to follow him, to give up all the things you earned, you really have to be dedicated. Now, I'm not saying you need to give up all the things you have, but I'm saying you need to be prepared to let go. And even that would include of life itself, to be prepared to let go. Don't hold on too tightly. Anyways, back to Mr. Epstein. And I wanted to show you that answer from ChatGPT just to highlight the consistency and the level of the lies you've been told. The lies have been so uniform that when I ask you guys the questions, the call and response, you all know the answer. How does inflation occur? Printing money. Well, then how do we stop it? Stop printing money. Then we find out that that was a lie. Extraordinary.
First off, tell our audience, how did that happen? The two great financial events in the 20th century, I'm not going to get to the 21st, were the great inflation in Europe after World War I, the Great Depression, the hyperinflation in Germany that led to the rise of Hitler, and then this inflation in the mid-70s. What was, before you go to explain inflation, why is the specter of inflation always the central thing in central bankers' minds?
Now, one thing that's worth noting, not related to what he just asked about central bankers, is debt has been mentioned a number of times. Here's the kicker. If your assets are, I'm not going to get too deep. Anyways, shout to Mr. Yasawi, supporting the work using the Stripe link. I appreciate you. I also acknowledge Das came in via Venmo. He writes, I have two questions. First, how does someone with your life manage daily without getting overwhelmed? I just accept that there are a significant number of things that I just cannot do. There are people I cannot respond to their text message. I cannot read their emails. I cannot answer their phone calls. I just cannot. And that's why, when I tell people I am not a celebrity, I don't want to hear from you, I don't want fan mail, it's true, I don't. Because when I get fan mail, that means that I cannot respond to people I actually know, because nothing is the same. Emailing is not the same when you're getting 1,000 emails. And it's like half of them are just like grown men sending you like memes. So I just accept, and I accepted this in business when I was running tech companies, you accept that there's a number of things that you cannot do. And that's why I always utilize honesty. And if I'm not going to do something, I try to tell people no straight away. I don't say maybe, I say no. Now, what I'm willing to do is if circumstances change, I'll come back and say, oh, I said I couldn't do that. I actually can. But saying no is an important one, making lists. And these are all the fundamentals that I discuss in Boss University, because being a boss means you're in demand. It means you're attractive. People want to be around you. People want to be you. People want to talk to you. You have to be able to manage that. And one of the most important things about being in the spotlight is, do you look good in the spotlight? Do you know how to handle it with grace instead of being a D-bag? And that has been something that I learned very early in life. I may have written about this in the black box. I don't recall if I put this story in there, but long story short, I was in this program called Teach for America. And there's a lot of young, beautiful women. And it was like 80-20, 80% female, 20% male. And of the 20% males, most of them were homosexuals. So this was just a killing field, man. And every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, especially during training, the Teach for America crew would go out. They go bar hopping, right? And for the handful of heterosexual guys, oh man, you just have your pick of the litter. And these are all wealthy, good-looking women who went to prestigious universities. It was just like, oh my goodness, it was unfair. Now, I don't drink alcohol. So every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, I would never show up. They go bar hopping, they go to happy hour, they go to the club. I was never there. But because I was obviously like by far and above like the coolest cat in the Teach for America Corps in the Philly, Baltimore area, the women would talk about me a lot. Oh, who knows Marquette? Who's hung out with him? Where is he? Is he, like what's going on? Why is he, he's so like charming and funny and friendly, like during the trainings, during the day, but I never see him in the evenings. Like, where is he? Who's he with? And so they create all these false stories and these like lies essentially about what I was doing on Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, or who I was with. And girls who liked me or had crushes on me would lie. They'd like literally make up stories about me having spent time with them or had conversations or had physical situations with them. And there's one young lady who was actually a gorgeous Latina, but at the time I was just not interested. She had sent me a friend request on Facebook, and I didn't accept it. And apparently this just sent her over the edge. And she started talking greasy about me, which is fine, except that there's this one gorgeous young lady named Kayla, who to this day I have a great amount of respect for. Beautiful woman, in like just beautiful all around, inside, outside, just a real masterpiece of a lady. And also took a degree in chemistry at Berkeley, first-rate brains, just a real winner. The only thing is we were about the same age, and Kayla was a good woman. She wanted to get married and have kids, which is really impressive when a woman is gorgeous, and I do mean gorgeous, and shaped the most amazing way, and educated, and comes from a good family. You hear me? Like, if I was older, I'd have got her pregnant ASAP, off rip. But it's like I just wasn't ready for that at that time, and that's why women should probably date older men. But anyways, I was dating her, and she's like the by far like the best chick you could have picked out of the bunch. And she was a good girl. And so I would hang out with her every now and then because I'm trying to get in position with her. And this other girl who's a Latina with a huge rack, skinny with a huge rack and pretty face, she kept saying, oh yeah, Marquette this, Marquette that. And she was like making up lies. And then I went and confronted her at one point. So it was like a Thursday, Friday night. I forget which day of the week. And people had invited me out, and I never go out. But the chick I was trying to, function with was out. And the Latina girl was telling stories to a group of people, like giving lectures on Marquette Devon Burton. And she was lying, and one of the homies was over there, and he had texted me. He was like, man, like so-and-so's over here saying you did this and you said that. And I was like, is she literally making that up? I was like, that's crazy. I got dressed. I'm at the house. Everybody else at the club. I got dressed, hopped in an Uber, showed up at the venue, pulled up. And when I pulled up at the venue, everybody was like, Marquette's here. Ah! Because I'd never been to anything. I'd never, ever, ever once gone out socially with these people. So everyone was like, Marquette's here. Oh, that's crazy. Oh, we got to do a shot. No, I don't even drink. They can't comprehend this. So anyways, I immediately go to the Latina. I was like, hey, why are you saying this stuff? And everyone's like circled around me just because I'm there. And then they're observing that I'm confronting this girl. And I learned a big lesson with that because I looked mean. Like I looked like a mean person, which was not how even though she had been like making up all these lies, I never lost favor with anybody based on the lies she was making up. I was just like angry because she was lying and she was messing up my chances with the chick I really was trying to slide on. And what I learned in that moment, and I should have already known this because I've always been popular my whole life. I've always been the popular kid. What I should have known is if someone's talking about you, you need to be thankful. You need to be thankful that you matter, thankful that you're on their mind, thankful that you're worth discussing as opposed to ignoring. And you need to have grace when you're in the spotlight. And I didn't have grace. I didn't think about it in the right way. And instead, I went and confronted this girl in the public, and I just looked like a mean person. And ironically, I kind of looked like the thing she was falsifying. I looked like the character she was describing me as. Still, I was able to slide on the shorty that I wanted. But I learned a lot by the way I basically let her play me out of position because my position was just like, man, this is like a cool ass fly, low key, unbothered kind of individual. And then here I am out here like, got to put the P hand on shorty. So I say all that to say, keep it player. Keep it player. So the gentleman asked me, how does someone with my life manage to not get overwhelmed? Keep it player. He writes, how does a young man with few responsibilities, train himself to grow into managing businesses, women, and major responsibilities like yours. You know, the key actually is to have simplicity and oneness, and choose the life that you have. Every day I'm asking myself, how can I do fewer things? And how can I do only the things that I really enjoy? And sometimes even for me, it's hard to actually assess effectively what I enjoy. I had one particular assistant who's really good at predicting me, better than I am at predicting myself, because I'm an introvert. And I'm a recluse by nature. Like I tend to stay away from people just by nature. So she'd be like, oh no, you should go to that networking event, or you should go to that party, or you should go meet so-and-so. You're going to have a good time. I'm like, nah, I don't think so. She's like, no, you are. Like, you would like this kind of person. You guys are going to vibe. And then I'll go and, have a great time. And so she was really good at predicting what I actually would like. But my instinct is to just like stay away from people. So it's good to have the right people in your life and around you. But remember, the whole point of this whole thing is to have a good, happy life. And that often comes from you making the design to achieve that.
Because it goes back to the first concept I said, the weird concept of fractionalized reserves. The system is not well understood. And most systems, in fact, are not well understood. We don't know how our digestive
Hold on,
system...
stop. This is
I
impossible.
understand.
This is impossible.
When he says most systems are not well understood, I don't know about that, but I think that'll increasingly be the case with AI and the ability of AI itself to create systems that we did not create as human beings. We weren't the architect of. And so increasingly we will have systems that are misunderstood, and this will take us farther away from humanity, farther away from, or I should say like humanness, like being human. It'll take us farther away from happiness and all of the fundamental things that should compose life. The direction that life and the world is going in is bad. It is fundamentally bad. And as I observe it, increasingly I understand the beauty of the way the Amish live. Now, if you want to take it one step further, the Amish, this is the way people live in the developed world, especially if they're rural. And that is what happiness is about. You have dweebs like Nerd Fuentes, they'll say things like, the blacks, they don't know how to build two-story buildings, which is in fact a lie. But even if they didn't, what they're really good at is being happy. And it turns out that that's actually the whole ball game. Life is about being happy. It's not about waging war on your neighbors. It's not about acquiring Greenland. It's not about, dominating the earth. It's about being happy. And happy people don't seek to create war with their neighbors. They don't seek to steal their neighbors' stuff. And the European model that the world has been oriented on has not created happiness. It's created bloodshed, strife, and general disrepair.
The world banking system, the world currency system, the world monetary system has to be so well understood by the Greenspans of the world and the Bernankes of the world and you, right? The currency traders, the guys making billion-dollar bets every day, the legendary guy on Wall Street in the late 90s, Versalin Brothers.
Lou Ranieri?
No, the guy that wrote the money.
Michael Lewis? Marius Poker?
Yeah, Marius Poker. Who's that about? That great trader.
Lou Ranieri.
No, it wasn't Lou, the guy that ran the desk. That eventually ran the hedge fund.
So you can tell that Steve Bannon is, I'm not going to say he's dumb, but he's not sharp. And also you see that these guys are naming names. I wouldn't say that they're name dropping, but it shows you the importance of people, human beings, human capital, human assets, knowing who these people are, knowing what their works are, most importantly, being connected to these folks. People matter a lot. Shout to Nathan. He writes, you're only in debt when you have to pay it back. Woo-wee! Ain't that the truth? He writes, the U.S. is $30 trillion up in stolen funds that will never be paid back. Peace of the saints. You got it. You got it. And as my boy Ye says, gotcha. That's right. When you have nuclear weapons, you don't have to pay back a damn thing. Shout out to Yasir. He writes, peace and saints, salute to the big homie in the realest of ways. I also acknowledge Emmanuel supporting the work. Appreciate you. Shout to Christopher, came in supporting the work using the Stripe link. Let's work.
That went long-term capital.
Yes, I don't remember.
Who's the guy?
I want to say, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Lunar is big, but
Yes.
those guys have to understand the system perfectly.
No, they don't understand the system. They understand the local part of the system. So, for example, why is not only inflation, most bankers are terrified if the public understood that the bank really doesn't have their money at any one time. It's one of the things during the Depression.
How crazy did that sound? He said, if the public understood that the bank does not have their money at any one time, it would cause panic. It would cause a lot of things. It would cause the system to fundamentally unravel. And immediately there's certain things that would become highly valuable all of a sudden, like guns and ammunition would instantly become very valuable. Food, farming become very valuable instantly, overnight. Land, things like this, things that I have, right? Intentionally on purpose. So this has happened before. I named Lebanon as an example. You had people, I kid you not, this is true. You had people robbing banks in Lebanon to get their own money. And that's because the banks were closing and not being willing to give anyone's money back, because they knew if they started giving some people's money back, the others would come and they'd run out of money because of the fractional banking that has been described.
Or runs on the bank. The reason the banks don't keep much money in the actual bank is they assume that not everyone's going to want their money on the same day. So it's not really the fear of inflation. The fear is a run on the bank. Everybody wants to take out something that doesn't really exist. Inflation is tied to interest rates. It's a more complicated example. But when your money doesn't buy the same amount of product this year than it did last year, if it buys less and less, like it happened, you use the term hyperinflation. There's certain countries that are not managed well, like in Africa at the current, a $100 billion bill, $100 billion bill in Zimbabwe.
Now, this is something that you often hear from the whites, and this is very deceptive, which would be in line with their nature, that he mentioned Zimbabwe. Now, Zimbabwe has been under crippling sanctions for a long time, and so they suggest that Zimbabwe has mismanaged and has not had good fiscal policy, when in actual fact, the strongest economy in the world, not only the strongest economy, the single strongest economy, but a collection of the developed economies have put sanctions on the country, which have caused the crippling, which is to say that the best of monetary policy could not survive that. And even you have countries that have not been under sanctions that have had trouble getting out from under debt that was strategically created through predatory loans and practices that are consistently done by the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and various other non-governmental actors. So they basically set up these African nation states to be vassal states. And then they step back and say, oh, these guys are screwing up. It's like, you literally walk them into a trap. Yes, you walk them into a trap. Some call it a debt trap. But the fact of the matter is, now he's using an example of failed policy in situations where policy was irrelevant. In the case of Cuba, in the case of Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Iran, policy is irrelevant. There's no amount of policy that can overcome being sanctioned by the United States in a dollar-backed global economy. It's just nothing that can contend with that.
Zimbabwe is worth 1 American cent. That's the perfect example of hyperinflation. It goes up, it doubles every day. So people are afraid that their value in the system starts to break down. But so if I said to you, does your doctor understand your body system? You'd say, well, I hope so, because I want him to keep me healthy. But you could have a kidney infection, you could have a heart attack, you could have a broken knee. There's lots of pieces of this system. And in fact, when you ask the question, very few doctors understand your entire body. There's a specialist for your knee, there's a specialist for your polynoidal cyst, there's a specialist for your head, and now we have specialists in different areas. So and I'm going to get to your first question about Santa Fe Institute. The world economy and your body are both comprised of little systems interacting with each other and making one big system.
This is what's stunning for all the little guys out there, the populist movement, the little guys that haven't had a pay raise in 30 years. They think.
I mean, the capitalist system is not about pay raises. It's about improving your skill set and getting a higher job because you're offering more value. That's what the capitalist system is about, and that's one of the things I like about the capitalist system. One thing that I appreciate that Mr. Epstein has just described is the fact that, you know, there are many small systems at work that constitute the larger system, and no one is a master of all of the systems. And increasingly that will be the case. And this is not a new conception. In fact, Karl Marx even spoke to things like that. The fact it's called division of labor, which of course would create division of knowledge, right? And this means that the era of the specialist is upon us, not the generalist. And you see compensation rates reflect that. If you're a general doctor, you practice family medicine, you're not compensated half as well as someone who does plastics or someone who's a surgeon or even more specifically a neurosurgeon. So it's your specialty that gets you the highest level of compensation, but it is because of your specialty that you're of course less likely to understand all of the systems of the human being, because you have to have specialized knowledge and skill, which can only come from the allocation of your time, your energy, emotions, and that is what it is. And though it's not often spoken of, it still remains true. And I appreciate him for pointing this out, which is to say no one is so intelligent that they know all things.
I think that these elites, you know, have everything. The guys in the room making the decisions, the party at Davos guys. You're sitting there, you don't think many people today really understand the complexity and really all the moving pieces and how they interconnect to the world's financial system.
No, not only don't they understand the complexity, and that goes back to Santa Fe Institute was an attempt of trying to see if there was a way to mathematize, formularize, or algorithmically understand what the term complexity means. That goes back to the original question. Complex systems are complex by definition. But there's not necessarily, it's not one level of complexity. We might say, well, our fingers are complex, the movements, the muscles of our hands, but it's not as complex as the blood system. Now I have a circulatory system. I have systems on top of systems, so that there's no one group of or person that really understands the way the body works. There's no one group that understands the way the financial systems work. You might understand U.S. bond fund, very small part of the, is there a way to get in, somehow understand how complex systems interact? Fast forward.
Now, let me kind of riff off of that if you don't mind. Mr. Epstein is kind of reiterating too much that no one person understands the whole grander system. But I would even posit that if there were such a person who could understand the entire system and they found out the solution to whatever the problem is, the solution would be so multivariate that it can't be implemented. You know, or if there was an AI model that could understand the entire problem, the solution itself would be so complex and require so many different inputs and approaches, and that it wouldn't be possible to implement because it would require too much coordination across too many different verticals or work group, etc. And that is fundamentally why I say the existing financial systems have to be done away with, because they're not reasonable and they're not manageable. And just side note, though intelligent individuals may not understand the whole system, they benefit off of the complexity, because the complexity, and also knowing, being aware that it's BS, keeps out average people and low or below average people, whether we're talking about average and below average in terms of income or understanding, or both. It kind of keeps them out and in the dark, and it allows them to be exploited. So the truth is, when you look at the stock market, it's really a tool of siphoning off the money from the middle class and poor and concentrating it at the top. That's really what it is, because the people at the top, the whales who have all the money, whether it's in crypto or paper assets, they're the market makers. They make the market. They cause the swings. And so Elon Musk can go online, and before he goes online, he can go buy a certain coin, some silly random cryptocurrency, and then make a single tweet and say, oh yeah, this cryptocurrency is the one to buy. Then everyone goes and buys, thereby driving up the price. And then he sells it, makes a huge profit, and then goes on to the next scam. So the same thing can occur in the stock market. We know that the stock, unlike crypto, has theoretically an underlying asset, and increasingly it becomes more disconnected, but it does have some level of underlying asset, unlike crypto, which is why crypto is more volatile. But the fact of the matter is that the same nature of scam can be run and is being run in the stock market. And the funny thing too is that the controllers of the society have finessed people so badly that you'll hear older white folks signing on to Trump and his racism and whatever he does, because they're saying my 401k is doing so well. Okay, your 401k is doing so well. One, you don't have that much money in it in general, because America wasn't designed for most people to have much money in their 401k. But more importantly, the money that you're going to have to spend from that 401k will be buying items that have a very inflated price, because inflation has hit significantly over time. So you can't predict how far that will or will not get you, but you're certainly bought into the idea that if you're not working, or you don't want to work, or you're retired, that this 401k is everything. And the reason the 401k, which is to say your retirement plan, is everything, is precisely because the government has also assisted in breaking down your families. So you can't depend on your children to take care of you. You have to depend on this 401k. And Donald Trump is the one who decides if the 401k is successful. And the 401k to you means survival, which is to say life and death. And so you hitch your wagon to the Donald, because he's in control of your life or death as you see it. Come on now. Come on now. Shout out to Das. He writes, every time you answer one of my questions, you give me so much insight that I feel like I become a better man that moment. You've been instrumental in helping me design a life centered around happiness. That's or nothing. It's a beautiful thing, man. Now also acknowledged via PayPal. Shout out to Wayne. He writes, thanks for the high-level breakdown. I must get back to work. Will replay. Peace of the saints. Absolutely. We all got to get to work. You did? Yes, indeed. Carrying on.
To today, where Google and these other engine companies, the other tech companies, are trying to build artificial intelligence. The strangest thing that they've found, one of the strangest things, is that the systems that they design, this artificial intelligence, which a lot of people have heard about, is they design a bunch of systems. They're called neural nets. The term's simply taken out of brain work, neurons in the brain. Nets because they actually look like a net. They put in some inputs. The computers work, spit out an answer. Sounds normal to you. It's because you're thinking about that calculator you had in 1976 on your desk. When you ask the person who designed the system, how did it come to that answer? How did your neural net, can you show me the calculations? They say, no, we don't know. We don't know how the thing we designed actually came up with that answer. That's pretty strange. They take the same neural net now and they put it in front of a video game. No learning, nothing. They said to the computer.
Now, the real question we should be asking ourselves is, what year did this come out? This interview, what year was this interview conducted? And I'd be curious as to what AI models he had access to personally. We know that the government does withhold technology from us, and sometimes for good reasons, many times not. But I'd be curious as to what models he was able to deal with. One thing that you guys can probably rightfully assume is, people who create things, they get excited about it. You want to show your friends, show your buddies. And, if you know Sam Altman personally, and he creates AI, you're going to get to use it and try it out long before the public. And that's one of the privileges of people, places, positions. And so, especially if you're a mathematician, math is at the basis of so many critical things, whether we're talking about science, just flatly across the board science and software and so on. So,
Say, sit in front of your video game and learn how to play. It seems the computer learns better than any human in history, faster than any human in history, beats any human in history, but when you ask the designer how did it do it, no one knows. It just did it. So that's the first little touch of things that we already have gotten to a place where we don't understand it, and we built it.
On Sunday afternoon, September 14th, 2008, where were you?
Sorry,
It was the night they put Lehman Brothers in bankruptcy in London.
I was in jail.
Seriously.
now this is this is an important piece. So Jeffrey was talking about being in jail, some time ago, and strangely, it's not very much so clarify why he was in jail. But also, I think you all should take note of how he speaks about having been in jail, like the level of acceptance, the slight instinct to laugh about it, or rather chuckle about it, and then the fact that he has no bad stories to tell. It doesn't lead him to any negative memory or anything like that. It's worth taking note on.
Yes.
So the financial crisis of 2008 happened when you were in jail?
Yes.
Oh, this is going to be so amazing. This is going to be so amazing.
He said the financial crisis of 2008. So Jeffrey Epstein was obviously cutting up long before you guys even, or I should say the public, the wider public knew his name. So sometimes we feel like individuals, just come out of nowhere, but everything builds. That's what in Boston University, I talk about that so much. Things build over time. It accumulates.
I take it you didn't have your Wall Street Journal dropped off to you in the morning, your Financial Times.
No.
How did you hear about because I want
I forgot about this, but yes.
I'm trying to get, this is going to be amazing. This is, let's go back and do that again. Sunday afternoon, because I want to find out about.
Another thing that you guys aren't noticing about the way Mr. Epstein carries himself, if you look at the interview in totality, and me, I'm very much so an observer, and so I see the micro expressions, particularly in instances where things are funny. I've noticed that he's almost never burst out into a laugh, maybe nearly a chuckle, but the smile almost doesn't overtake his face. It's only very brief. He'll smile very briefly, not even a full hearty smile. And that's an interesting point on his nature, his seriousness, his focus, and the fact that it's funny, okay, now on to the next thing. And the mind is like more so digesting information, and like the eyes are wide open for, what are you saying to me? And also you'll notice a pattern of speech between Mr. Bannon versus Mr. Epstein is that Epstein has more precision, more specificity, less inclined to repeat himself, though there was one bout at which he did repeat himself greatly when he was trying to clarify that we don't understand systems, human beings. But otherwise, he's been very precise with his language. And he is a very well put together, sharp guy. To say that he is not would frankly be a lie.
The geniuses understanding the complexity of the financial system. Because I think the best example we have is the financial crisis, the crash of 2008. Sunday afternoon, September 14th, I think it was, 2008, is when they were working feverishly in Midtown Manhattan at the Lehman Brothers offices and at various law firms around town, and with the Secretary of Treasury and the Federal Reserve, what they're going to do with Lehman. They decided they weren't going to save it. And so they prepared to put it into bankruptcy at the open of the market in London the next day. How did you hear about what was going to happen to Lehman Brothers, and what did you immediately think when you heard that it was going to be put into bankruptcy?
I'm glad you asked that question. I was in solitary confinement September 14th. And again, some of the public stories about the wonderful time I had in jail and my work release, which didn't come till months after. I'd been there since June, in an 8x10 cell with a bed in the back, a 6-foot bed in the back, a chrome sink with a toilet attached to it, and a little piece of metal sticking out that was supposed to act as a table. Now, since I was in jail, there were no books. Why? There's no library. No library, but you're in jail. No, I was in jail, not prison.
This man is truly hilarious. One, he's describing a situation of being comparatively very deprived, right? It's one thing to go from freedom to being unfree. It's yet another thing to go from being worth hundreds of millions, maybe billions, and then be in a jail cell. So he's describing it accurately, but dispassionately, and it's very funny to me. It's very funny to me. I also find it comical. It seems as though one of his typical means of clarifying himself is to speak on what something could be and then retract it. So it's like saying, well, I'm wearing a pair of nice shoes. No, I'm not actually. These are Pro Wings. I got them from Payless. Now, this is kind of the way he structures his speech, which I find to be funny.
So in jail, I was in a place which was called the Special Housing Unit, which is for the roughest, toughest, meanest people. They had put me there, they said, for my own protection. So I was in a 8x10 cell with a little slit in the door where they would serve my food on a tray about 9 inches by 4 inches. And then as soon as I finished eating that.
And this is something that's very important. I always tell you guys this, especially when you ask me certain types of questions. I say that think and speak like a businessman. In Boston University, I talk about stuff like this, which is to say, speak in numbers. I absolutely hate when I fail to speak in numbers. I hate when people fail to respond to me in numbers when I ask for numbers, because mostly the numbers will tell you all you need to know. When I talk to people, even if your lady says, hey, dinner will be ready soon. How many minutes is soon? I don't deal in soon. I don't deal in late. How many minutes late will you be? And that the inclination to use measure and numbers, it represents a person's personality, their detail orientation, their competence. And you can hear him even using numbers where it is largely irrelevant. Do we need to know the measure of the metal tray that you were eating your breakfast off of? Nah, not at all. But it also is a way for him to signal his consciousness of his situation. And when you listen to people's speech, not only does it reveal intelligence or lack thereof, it also reveals how their mind works, like how they process information. It reveals their sense of humor. And these are all clues that you can utilize to influence people or to gain favor with people, or to know, am I like this person or am I unlike this person? Can I get along with this person? Do we laugh at the same things? Do we see the world in a similar way?
Take the tray and close it down. And one of the guards said, do you understand there's Wall Street's crashing. I'm worried about my pension fund. What should I do? And I said, sorry, Wall Street's crashing? What's happened? And he said, there's some crisis and some companies are going bankrupt. I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, it's all over the papers. We're all terrified. We're going to lose our life savings because we have either a 401k or our pension funds. We don't know anything about money. Mr. Epstein, can you tell us, what's going on? Am I going to be able to afford my children's education? Am I going to be bankrupt like this company called Lehman Brothers? And there's another company in the front page today called Bear Stearns. Oh, no, I said. Why? Because that's the company I was a partner in. And in fact, that was a company I had a very large investment in. So, as a great story, I didn't have my Wall Street Journal, but in the early mornings, you're allowed to make 2 phone calls, collect. And when you pick up the phone, you can dial a number, and when the person picks up, they say, "You're getting a call from the Palm Beach County Jail. Will you accept reverse charges?"
And another thing that people don't often speak of, which is a component of intelligence, actually critical, is memory. You know, at a certain level, long-term memory, certainly short-term memory, but memory. Having capacity and the ability to comprehend things is important, but remembering things, whether it's definition or rudimentary pieces of knowledge, that's what your intelligence builds on top of. So if you don't have those fundamental memories of certain pieces of critical information, you can't build on top of it. So memory is very important, and you'll observe that those who are bright often have pretty good recall. So the speed and quality of your recall is a major component of intelligence, and we can see that he's recounting this in detail with no well. And this is precisely why I can't watch YouTube for the most part, because most people cannot articulate themselves without their brain freezing, because they have a slow processor. They mentally process slowly, so they're not a pleasure to listen to if you have a fast processor. That's why so often I look at people in the podcast space, I'm just perplexed as to how you end up in a job where you talk for a living, but you can scarcely talk. What can you do? Anyway, shout out to Real Ready supporting the work. I appreciate you.
The person either says yes, and the call goes through, or the person says no. The person I had called was Jimmy Kane, the president of Bear Stearns. And I said, "Tell me what's going on." And so that my knowledge of the financial crisis happened with Jimmy, who was at the center of the storm, telling me about what Lehman had gone under, and they were trying to figure out a way, should they bail out Bear Stearns?
Did it strike you at the time of the mess you had made of your life to be in a situation that you're one of the greatest financial minds in the world, looked at by world leaders? And
one thing I want everyone to take note of is that when people say Epstein was an asset of the Israelis, or he was a spy, or fill in the blank, all of these things may have been true, but that does not mean that he was not gifted in finance. That doesn't mean that he was not a very intelligent math mind. These things can be true at the same time, and unfortunately, human beings have trouble accepting that multiple things can be true. And frankly, good intelligence services recruit the right people, and then they can add money, they can add network, they can position the person to be able to create the relationships needed to extract information or to manipulate the thinking and behavior of certain figures. So Epstein seems like he was one of the right guys. I would find it very easy to believe that he was an asset of a foreign intelligence service, in as much as his network was just unparalleled, and it would appear that he was taking every effort to put people in compromising situations, which makes perfect sense in terms of if you're trying to control and manipulate them. I can't think of any better leverage you could have over someone than saying, "Hey, I have you doing these inappropriate things with someone who looks like they should still be playing hopscotch."
Ask your thinking by the most prominent and important people in the world, and here you are in solitary confinement. You got to make a collect call to somebody. Did it strike you at the time how all the threads of your life had come together and put you in a position, or you had put yourself in that position?
No.
So it never struck you when you had to make one of your two collect.
Well, you guys observe, Steve Bannon is having some trouble accepting Epstein's response, which was straightforward. Hard to believe, and I observe this in the comments in YouTube all the time. Some individuals have so much trouble accepting that you're not like them, that you don't think in the same ways that you don't feel the same set of emotions, that you don't use the same moral compass or rationality. And so generally, if they find that you're too rational, they'll call you a sociopath, or they'll pretend as though there's something wrong with you. And in fact, maybe there's something wrong with them, or maybe you're just different. You two are different individuals. And in the case of Steve, he is having, A, he's in disbelief, and B, he just refuses to accept Mr. Epstein's answer. And so instead, he pretty much ends up badgering Mr. Epstein. But Epstein takes it, in fact, it almost seems like it's nothing to a boss. He seems to take it quite well, but there's no doubt that he's badgering him. May I also acknowledge supporting the work. Shout out to Marco. He writes, peace to the Saints tuition. And also shout out via PayPal. John, he writes, had to come back and support the great work again. I appreciate you, John. Thank you. And shout out to Jay, comes in via Venmo, right, showing support for the Epstein reaction. Peace to the Saints. Oh, okay. Can you forward that to me? We'll get that taken care of. I appreciate you. And shout out to all the folks who have learned to create product-based businesses. I actually have Isaiah's suitcase with me on my current trip. I'll be taking it around the world. So shout out to all the saints who have gone to school.com/Marquette. You hit classrooms. There's a course that I recommend. It's still really far too cheap. It's a nice little mini course, and it talks about how to create your own product-based business with $500 or less, which is phenomenal because it's a small enough amount of money that anyone can get started on it. I actually just recently created another product prototype myself. I'll show it to you guys sometime soon.
50% of your collect calls that day, you call the president or the head of the CEO of Bear Stearns. The biggest financial event in your life is taking place, of which one, every important person in the world would be seeking your opinion. Number two would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to apply your craft. Number three, it would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make money if you were smart, and obviously you're smart. You're telling me here, truthfully, that it never hit you at all of how you'd ended up in a place where you had to make a collect phone call from a jail cell that was 6x9 with a steel bed and your food being passed in through a slot.
The question you want to ask is, who was the other call to?
Okay, who?
No, the funny thing is that Jeffrey just told bro the question that bro should ask, but this is actually the question that Jeffrey would rather answer. So it's funny because Steve A is re-asking a question, which would only indicate that he really wants to know the answer. And then Epstein, this is probably the biggest smile we've seen him make. And then he's saying, well, you should want to know who else did I call? And this is also just Epstein enjoying what he became, which is to say, I can call the head of Bear Stearns. I can call the CEO of this or that fund or fill in the blank. I can call the big money managers. I can call the Wall Street giants. I am at the center of all of this. And he's enjoying it at this point. And I can't blame him. Hey, shout out to those who have been successful. May I acknowledge Michael? Comes in by Venmo. He writes, peace of the saints. This live is very insightful to me. Thank you for the lessons as they motivate me to improve my sharpness. Yeah, me too, man. And you know, one of the challenges is that we're not always around people who are, have A1 brains. And so if we don't sharpen the tools, they will become dull. I promise you that.
Who was the other call to?
The other call was to my friend at JP Morgan, who was then, I didn't know it at the time, trying to buy Bear Stearns. So at one point, I had two phones. It was difficult because they're afraid people are going to hang themselves with the phone cord. So they don't actually come together and they're pretty short. So I was actually going between two phones talking to Bear Stearns and JP Morgan at the same time. So I found it amusing.
Clearly.
And it never struck you about how to end up in a situation like this?
No, that would be probably means I would be too self-aware.
You can't possibly expect me to believe this.
I know. I don't believe it.
You're telling me that during that day, you never had a moment. You sat there and go, what the fuck have I done with my life that I'm in a 6x9 jail cell when I should be on a trading desk or I should be in my $250 million greatest townhouse in New York City taking calls from the king of Saudi Arabia, the president of China, the head of Russia, the president of the United States, to save.
And that's beautiful. That's just boss talk. And you will achieve things like that when you set your mind to do it, and not a moment sooner. The problem is that most of us, we don't set big enough goals. And that is something that will eat away at your happiness. There's nothing worse than doing less than you could have done. Be happy. I'm not saying don't be happy. Don't be content, but you need to want more, especially if you can deliver the goods. Shout out to Mr. Egbuno. Came and supporting the work via PayPal. Appreciate you. Shout out to the real ones. Shout out to the saints around the world. Carrying on.
The world's population from a financial debacle. You honestly expect me to believe that never happened?
You're suggesting I was somewhat depressed, and how could this happen to me?
I'm not saying depressed. I'm saying a moment of awareness of how could I get myself into this situation.
No, I would just say how strange that this happens. It's strange. I'm wearing a jumpsuit and flip-flops.
What
given
color
to
was
me.
the jumpsuit?
Brown. Brown.
Brown jumpsuit.
Yes.
I notice I don't see you in a lot of brown.
No.
Brown jumpsuit and flip-flops.
Flip-flops, yes.
With no access to books, no access to newspapers,
No access to anything.
You had lived on information.
Except my Almond Joy bars. I had extra Almond Joy bars.
Did you eat Almond Joy bars and things like that because you're afraid of what the cooks did to your food?
Yes.
Is that because of that you were in for the crimes that you were in for?
No, it was just in fact, I was...
Is it because you're wealthy?
Yes.
How did you know that?
Well, people would constantly come, if I was passing by or have to go for my medical, people would either ask to borrow money or make some other types of comments about...
In
the beginning...
What were the comments? At the beginning, what were the comments?
It serves you fucking rich guys right that you're here next to me.
And class warfare is always going to be a thing. But yeah, jail is a terrible place. It's filled with imbeciles for the most part, and extortionists, manipulators of all type. I can't think of one place I'd want to be less, except maybe one time I flew into Brazil and I didn't know they were having an LGBTQ parade. It was a horrible sight. I was on a late night run. I turned down the wrong street. I saw all kinds of horrid things I'd never liked to see in my whole life.
There was nothing about your crimes.
No.
So all this rumor you hear all the time about people in prison that commit the type of crimes you commit, you're saying in your personal thing is not true.
No.
It was all because you were rich.
Yes.
And it was all...
Bro said, who commit the type of crimes you commit. And the funny thing is that Epstein wasn't even denying it. Bro was like, yeah. He's just very matter of fact about it. I don't think bro feels bad at all either. Just side note. Shout out to Mr. Ruffin writes, peace and Saints Tuition Assassin Miami. Looking forward to seeing you on this drip trip, young man. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeedy.
all because they wanted to borrow money.
Or get advice. Yes.
Where they get advice to
stock
go long, to go
which-
long.
yes,
Are you
is it-
telling me
is this time to buy?
You're telling me in solitary confinement they're interested in going long?
Yeah. They want to know
What
what
does that say
stocks.
about human nature?
Well, what I think the people find, one of the reasons they wanted to keep me in solitary confinement was they were afraid that everybody would want to know which stocks to buy. But what happened was after
In case you guys aren't picking it up, this is a huge representation of being a real value add. A lot of people think that they're valuable. They think that they have meaningful knowledge, they have good skills. If you're in jail and people are trying to engage you for your knowledge and skill set, you know something. And that's really the guy you want to be, the one who is a skilled person. So you have to tip your hat to him for that. And also, he's in the right industry at the right time. Timing is also very important. Sometimes, people come to me with business ideas or questions about their future, and it's not the right thing at the right time. Maybe being a software developer meant something different in 2019 than it does in 2026. I still highly recommend that, but it means something different. We got a nutcase here. Hold on, where is he? Let's see. Look at bro right here. He writes, Marquette, how is it that you teach people how to become wealthy when you're pulling 79 viewers and are lucky to maybe pay your phone bill this month? Oh, God. Bro, I appreciate you, bro. I appreciate you, man. I really do. I really do. I appreciate you for that. I want to thank you for being one of the 79 viewers because, you helped me get that phone bill paid, and I appreciate you, man. Thank you very, very much.
This crisis, now it's on the front page of every newspaper.
I don't want to lose this day.
Sorry.
When you first heard that, was it Bear Stearns had been kicked into bankruptcy, 6 months before?
No, this is the same time. This is part of the same deal.
I thought, no. Bear Stearns, they saved Bear Stearns and didn't save Lehman Brothers. That's
right.
it. 6 months before they had bailed out Bear Stearns, but Bear Stearns was still a zombie.
A shell of its former self.
A former why hazard. Explain to the audience what moral hazard is and why did they save Bear Stearns 6 months?
The real issue is I'd have to go back when you have these systems to the way your doctor responds inside the overall system. People, if at that time, even it's not that long ago, Jeffrey, what really?
When I listen to Mr. Epstein talk, sometimes I think about management because I've been in the CEO position and I've managed a lot of people who have specialized knowledge and they're experts in what they do. And I'm not an expert in what they do, but I still have to be able to get outcomes out of them. And sometimes when you listen to a guy like Epstein, as a CEO, you're like, yeah. But I need you to do this. It's like, yeah, bro, that shit is cool, bro. But I need you to achieve this. And that's a very important skill to have because you'll never be successful by yourself. You'll always be better off when you have really smart people working for you. In some cases, they will be smarter than you are. They might not be as rich, but they'll be smarter. And you'll learn that it's your mix of IQ and EQ, which is why you're the one making the big bucks. And that's why you see sometimes Epstein is answering questions in a way that's maybe accurate, but not helpful. Shout out to Tahiri. He writes, peace to the saints to help with that phone bill. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for the support. And thank you to Mr. 9388 comes in again. He writes, peace to the saints. Phone bill help. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you all helping with that phone bill. And I also appreciate you even more for slapping that hater in that face with that.
Really happened? What is this financial crisis? And, some of the progressives and the right wing blame it on the banks. It was the banks' fault. And it's the fault of this very esoteric, unknown concept of derivatives. It was really the derivatives that caused this financial crisis because the derivatives got somehow out of control and in the Mickey Mouse.
And that was the way you started your road to a billionaire went right through derivatives.
Yes. But derivatives were not the cause. Derivatives were not the cause at all. It's like saying your hair was the cause of your heart attack because it was on top of your head.
So what
when you
was the
fell
cause?
Down. There isn't. Let me say, there's no.
It's funny listening to Epstein try to answer this question because the question is straightforward, but the answer is not straightforward. And Mr. Bannon is looking for a straightforward, simple explanation, where in actual fact, the explanation is multivariate and sophisticated. And Epstein, he does his blinking thing, which is almost like, hey man, you're asking me to dumb this down to a level where the answer won't be useful. And again, it's a matter of managing smart people. Shout out to Jay Upgrade writes, AT&T fund. Thank you. And the key, and I appreciate all of you guys who support the work and have good humor, and it really means a lot for you to make a show of support. And the key is for us to deal with these kind of devils and detractors and haters. And it's beautiful to deal with them together like that. We're always stronger together. But to always remember that these people are not happy. They're not enjoying life, and the best thing we can do is not let them steal away our happiness or distract us, because the chief tool of the devil is deceit and to distract you from your goal, distract you from your happiness and all that good stuff.
One specific cause. These are system collapses. So many times when they have to make your death certificate, when you say, well, what did he die from? They'll say heart failure. But if you say, what was the cause of his heart failure? Well, he had low blood pressure, his sugar was high, he was third. And that's the financial crisis. People said, well, what caused it? They wrote, like on its death certificate, derivatives. But derivatives were not a fundamental.
It was Monday morning.
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan. That was Monday morning. Did you, Jeffrey, being one of the financial geniuses in the world, did you understand what Lehman Brothers going into bankruptcy, the domino effect, that by Thursday the financial system would be under such extremis that if it didn't have $1 trillion cash infusion in the United States, it might collapse? Did you know that at the time? Did you view that at the time?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah.
Why?
Again, I don't want to bore you or the audience with the idea of it's a medical procedure, but you had system failures. So you'd recognize that if I said to you, did you realize when your father was on the ground and he was clutching his chest and he couldn't breathe, it was a bad situation, he could die. That's how I saw it.
Did you immediately think?
The challenge is, everyone wants to say that they knew in advance, that they're brilliant. We don't know if Epstein's telling the truth or not. We do know, certainly, that it would be more favorable to say that you knew when no one else knew. Civilized Barbarian comes in by Venmo. He writes, off topic, what are your thoughts on getting limb lengthening surgery for a 5'8" guy aiming for 6 foot? I would not do it. And I realize I'm not 5'8". I understand that. However, I can tell you that I know the importance of health, and I know that there's some things in life that you cannot get back, and the risk is too high. Today, for example, I got a massage, and the funny thing, I like Thai massage. So I go in thinking I'm getting a Thai massage. I don't book my own appointments. So I'm going in thinking I'm getting a Thai massage. Apparently that wasn't available, so a deep tissue massage was booked for me. And it just so happens that the masseuse was about 5'10", probably weighed about 220. She was solid, and she was really going deep tissue. And I've had broken ribs from boxing. And as I was, laying face down on this mat, and she was just going so deep tissue with her elbow on my back, it was pushing my ribs into the table and was causing extreme pain, just because of the way the ribs heal is not the same as the way your ribs were before they were broken. It's different. And I can tell you that limb lengthening surgery, they break your bones, right? They give you some extension, and it won't be the way it was before. And though you may not feel that you were made perfectly or made well or made up to the standard you want or the aesthetic that you think women find attractive, you are perfect just as you are. And when the hand of man tries to alter that which God created, I can promise you that there will be some things that will not work right. And most importantly, this limb lengthening surgery has not existed long enough that there's significant data on how this goes over time. Will you be arthritic in old age? I think that it's certainly not worth it. And unfortunately, you can only live from your perspective. You'll never know what it feels like to walk into the room as another guy. I'll never know what it feels like to walk into a room as a white guy or as a Latino or as an Asian. I just know what it feels like when I walk in as the bald head lover, as the handsome hustler, as the gorgeous gangster. But I don't know what it feels like to be anyone else. But what I can tell you is, in talking to many men, a lot of men come to me for consultations, or they might reach out with a question on wisdom.com/Marquette Devon. And whether a guy is 5'5" or 6'5", they all have girl problems. They all have problems getting the girl. They have problems dominating and leading in the relationship. And that's across all of the heights. So who you are as a man, what you become, the level of charm you can exercise, the strategy you can utilize, those are the more important things. That's why I created the Big Game Conference. There's nothing in the Big Game Conference that talks about looks maxing. There's nothing in the Big Game Conference that talks about limb lengthening or height, because those are not the deciding factors in the woman that you're actually going to get, or your ability to lead in that relationship. So what you need is not longer limbs, you need the game. You need the game. The game is everything, because we know that it's not the guy who's the best looking or the tallest that gets the girl. It's the guy who has the best strategy, the most effective strategy. Just like the people who are the wealthiest people in the society are not necessarily the smartest, highest IQ people or the most well educated. It's the people who have the best strategies. That's it, full stop. So long story short, young man, I say absolutely not. He writes, the success rate is 95%. Well, that depends on how you're defining success. What's the success rate 10 years out? What's the percentage of people who become arthritic? How do the legs perform under stress? What happens if you get an injury? How is it exacerbated by that? It's honestly bone chilling just thinking about that. He writes, the success rate is 95%. I know that being taller is an advantage in a lot of social situations. Yeah, but not enough for what you're risking. I don't think the payout is anywhere near, I don't think it's even close. Shout out to Albatar. He writes, peace of saints, helping pay your phone bill, commander, respect. I appreciate you. Yeah, this phone bill gonna get paid. Shout out to Mark. He writes, peace of saints, tuition for the Epstein Live. You're very welcome, and thank you. I also acknowledge via PayPal. Shout out to Ray. He writes, just wanted your opinion. Have you ever considered making a shirt or a hoodie with all of your various logos together on it? No, I haven't, because I'm more so on the simple side, especially from a design perspective. Ray comes in. He writes, in your opinion, should FBAs be out protesting and squaring up with ICE? No, sir, probably not. Probably not. Shout out to Patrick. Patrick, I actually have a lesson in the Master Communicator course, and it talks about communication in the workplace. I think that'll answer your questions very well. But long story short, keep it business. Shout out to Mr. Chambliss. He writes, shout out to Marquetahim Traore for standing up and creating his own trilateral commission. Shout out to Briggs for kickstarting the de-dollarization process. Yeah, it's a pity because our money is in dollars. And so, of course, we'd like to see the dollar remain dominant. And so, however foolish the Donald appears to be, at some level, I'm rooting for him because we're all in the same boat and I don't want it to sink.
About the commercial paper market, I mean, the mechanical triggers that actually you had to blow through these circuit boards. Did you know the circuits? Did you understand the circuits? Or did you have a concept of the circuits that were going to get blown through?
Yes, but only because of an analogy to a body. And in fact, from my telephones against the wall with my little metal wires, because the next day I talked to another person in Washington about the issues of what I thought was happening, and I made the same discussion about the...
They were at the Treasury Department?
Yes.
So in a 6x9 cell,
the phones were outside the cell.
In Palm Beach County, California?
West Palm Beach, Florida.
West Palm Beach, Florida.
That's what your juice diet.
West Palm Beach, Florida. West Palm Beach, Florida. West Palm Beach, Florida. That does not, the night before you go to bed, it doesn't dawn on you at all. You never have a moment of self-reflection that, how did I end up on this metal cot when I should be at the center of things?
No, I had a telephone, so I said, I can talk to, it makes no difference where I am. In fact, I'm still talking to the same person if I was at my home in Palm Beach. But I'm here in jail.
Home in Palm Beach.
I can dial my own.
Again, this goes back to Mr. Bannon trying to insert certain emotions and perspective into Mr. Epstein that Mr. Epstein either is not admitting to or just frankly does not feel or didn't experience. But what I have to admire is that he took psychological, as he represents the situation having occurred, he took psychological control over a bad, disheartening situation and decided to endure it with great presence of mind. And you don't even see a hint of regret or disappointment. He seems to have the idea that he made his bed and he'll lay in it, and that's fine.
Phone.
That's bullshit. No, but you can also make 1,000 phone calls. Here you got to make one, and he's got to take.
Think
the
how much
charges.
better that was. I had to decide who was the right person to call. That was unusual for me, because I would have called 20 people.
And
before.
what was the advice you gave him?
I said, you have a sick patient, and it's very much like a sick patient in the emergency room. If it breaks, cars are always easy. If it breaks, I know it works machine. Put some more juice into the commercial paper. To say, here's the most logical place. What's the most dangerous place? If your heart stopped, we have to start. You're dead.
Putting cash into the
Forget
system.
about what it is.
Okay.
Liquidity is liquidity. It allows the system, it's the blood of the system. You need to pump blood hard into the body of the economy to keep it flowing. And if you're, especially when you're worried about someone dying, you're not going to be worried about the niceties of, well, you got the shirt dirty and there was some damage. Pumping that blood, keep that heart
When you
pumping.
talked to the person in Treasury on Tuesday, the 16th, did you get a feeling as you were sitting in your 6x9 jail cell in West Palm Beach, Florida, that they were on top of things?
No, you can't. It's impossible to be on top of things. There's no such thing. It's, again, the doctor watching the patient die. You hopefully have some confidence that he's seen it before. He recognizes that there are some steps he has to take first before he bandages the guy's finger or worries about what shoes he has on. So you hope that the people in charge, your doctors who are working on the emergency patient, have enough experience and, frankly, judgment to try to keep the patient alive.
Did you think that?
Bro, dropping some serious game. Listen, man, you could love him or hate him, and I think most people seem to hate him, but my Neil dropping some GAME. You hear me? This man is dropping some game, boy. Whoo. And I can relate to it so much, especially, running businesses and, the first thing people try to do is steal from you. And the comedy is, it's not always poor people. Rich people will also try to steal from you. And the truth of the matter is, when Mr. Bannon asked him if he felt felt comfort knowing that his lawyers were on top of things, or whoever the functionary is on top of things, and he says no one's ever on top of things. He's like, that's not true. That doesn't happen. And I can relate to that so much. What you're really dealing with, and certainly him as a math mind, you're dealing with probability. You're not dealing with certainty. You're dealing with probability. You're not dealing with constants. You're dealing with variables. And there's just more or less probability that certain things will or will not happen. And your goal is to identify the functionaries who can deliver you more than likely the results that you're seeking. And I appreciate his quality of thinking, and it relieves him of having to exercise emotional turmoil on himself. So bro is really out here cooking on the low, bro, cooking. Shout out to Mark. He writes, and I got you with the phone bill too, big homie. I appreciate you. Shout out to Mark supporting the work. We're going to get this phone bill taken care of this month for the first time. Shout out to Ray, comes in via PayPal. He writes, what did you think of Shakur this weekend? Shakur put on a masterful performance. It was really A1, undeniable.
Did you think that they had those things, patience and judgment?
They had.
Excuse me. Hey there. Would you mind making me a plate? Thank you.
Pretty good judgment, and you needed a lot of luck, just like in the dead patient. You need to, hopefully you put that blood in and it's not too late. And you may
You know, that's a very insightful comment. He does not sound like a person who would take his own life. He sounds like a very optimistic person who finds it easy to accept things. But maybe that is a person who would take their own life. Maybe you accept that this is the end. You accept that I can't live the life that I want, so I'm not going to live any life, which is a rational decision. I think so often in the popular consciousness, the idea of taking your own life is failure, when really it can be a rational escape to a life that you do not want to live, that you're not willing to live. So I think that is wholly a possibility. I don't think that taking your own life has to come from a place of being depressed or down. It can come from a calm, rational position of, I prefer to be a billionaire and live in Manhattan and have a home in South Florida and travel at my leisure. I do not agree to spend the next decade of my life surrounded by petty criminals. So I'm not going to participate in that. I'm going to take the exit. That's also an option. And it's because most human beings are emotional wrecks. I don't really like that stuff. Yeah, so you don't have to add any more of that. Oh, what is that the Singapore noodle? I didn't try that last time. Okay, yeah, so I'll try that. Okay, for sure. Yeah, so the problem is projection, right? So we watch ourselves as human beings on TV and in dramas, and so we assume that human beings are going to behave, think, and react in uniform ways. But Epstein is an above average person in terms of IQ, rationality, and the math orientation of his brain being very logical. So I do believe that he could come to that conclusion quite easily. In fact, like me personally, I don't think I'd agree to live around a bunch of dudes for a decade with no chicks, no joy. I'm a free bird. I love freedom. And especially if you've lived with great wealth, the difference between his previous life and his current life, it's a much bigger gap than most of the other inmates. And so I could totally see him rationally deciding to end it. Whereas I think for most people, that's hard to see. But most people, again, are irrational and they project. I saw one dweeb in my comments recently, and he said, I'd made a statement about something. And he said, oh, you don't have any kids. When you have kids, you'll change. And I've heard people say over my lifetime, mostly women, older black women, in fact, they say, oh, you're going to change. When this happens, you're going to change. When you get this age, you're going to change. And it's like, no, I'm actually going to stay the same. And uniquely, I've changed very little. I'm still fundamentally the same person I was at 15. I've had a lot more experience and I can draw from that and make decisions, but I'm using the same filters and culture to make decisions. Like I've changed very little. I'm a very consistent person. I know who I am and it's never changed. That's why I've never drank alcohol. I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never used any drugs, ever. I've not changed. So I find it quite comical and really pathetic when human beings like, oh, no, you're going to change. It's like, no, I'm not like you. We're not the same kind of human. And I can very much so see that in Epstein, that he's kind of on his own page.
Make some mistakes, but you have to know you're going to have to give it a shock.
In the run-up to the September crash of 2008,
Yeah.
I guess you weren't occupied with finance. That whole summer, how long had you been in jail?
Went to jail June 30th.
So the entire summer.
Yes.
Before you went into jail, you were still very active in the financial markets.
Yes.
When I say active, you trade currencies every day, you trade stocks every day. When people,
I don't do any-
someone like you, or you give advice to people to trade stocks or trade currencies.
I don't trade every day. I think that's, like Woody Allen said, you can't beat the bank. So I try to pick my spots. George Soros picked his spot when the pound collapsed. This would have been a great money-making opportunity that passed me by when I was in jail, but that's not how I think.
In the run-up to that, in the spring of 2008, that's when Bear Stearns got in problems, I think, in the spring of 2008, and they decided to bail it out. Did the Bear Stearns guys talk?
See, that's exactly what I was talking about. Mr. Epstein stated, this could have happened, that could have happened. It didn't happen. It's okay. But more importantly, that's not how I think. I'm not a deficit focused person. I'm more so looking at what's going to succeed. And more importantly, I don't try to make money on everything. I don't try to trade every day. I try to, leverage the things that are sweet spots for me. I'm playing my own game. And, most people, especially those who don't know who they are, they're always trying to play someone else's game. And I learned that when I was a young man. I remember I had an office in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I was talking to a guy who was an investor in my company, but he invested via a syndicate. He was a successful black guy. And he was telling me and some other entrepreneurs about his business, why he has enough wealth to invest. And I remember listening to his business and I was asking myself how I could apply technology to his particular vertical to do his business even better than he can do it. And I started asking him about his business and he said, hey, hold on. You do effortless attendance. You don't do what I do. You're not in the credit business and the X, Y, you don't do X, Y, and Z. He said, you got to do what you do. And it was really a good point. I appreciate him checking me. And then I start to observe that in other people that we're always trying to do what is not meant for us. We're trying to get the quick money. You need to get the money that's meant for you. You need to do the things that are aligned with your personality, your skill set, your emotional makeup. There's some, like, for example, at this point in life, there are a lot of financial opportunities that I could maximize on that I don't, because I just don't want I don't want to earn my money in certain kinds of ways. Just like some women are willing to show their body to earn their money, most of them online. And then others is just completely an unacceptable concept. You got to stay in your lane.
To you for advice at that time when the big crisis in Bear Stearns?
No, but see, again, unbeknownst to most people, and it's easy to blame people for the financial crisis, like you'd blame someone for giving your father the drink before he had his heart attack. But what really happened, the real enemy of the finance system was Bill Clinton. And if
Now, this is funny because intelligent people can see that he's now contradicting himself. And this is a really funny and interesting, very insightful part, actually. I am going to go ahead and end this live session right now because we're 3 hours in. If you guys think that this one is interesting, if you remember, let me know. Send me a DM or something. Let me know you'd like to hear a continuation of this one, and we'll go ahead and get back after it tomorrow. I've had fun. I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot, and more importantly, it's reminded me of a lot of good lessons. And good information bears repeating. That's why I encourage you guys, if you've bought any of my courses, go through them again, watch the lectures again, engage with the information, because you are not complete as a human being. You always need to be striving for better. How can you implement the lessons better? And it's like a good piece of music, a good song. Sometimes you put on your headphones, you hear an instrument that you didn't hear before. You understand a bar that you didn't fully comprehend before. So, a course like Boston University is about 8 hours. A course like Book of Dark Truth is 14 hours. Go back over it. It's a lot of information. Anyways, ladies and saints, it's been a pleasure to have this time to fellowship with you. Until next time.